We have some minutes from November 9th, 2022. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Hope everyone had a chance to review them. Thank you, Neil. Thank you again. We look forward to not thanking you for taking minutes. Probably not as much as you look forward to it. Any comments or questions, clarifications on the minutes? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I would like to abstain because I wasn't here.
Yes, great. Valid excuse.
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, Ken, we're gonna do a town financials update, please.
On the financials, the report is that there's really nothing unusual to report on the expenses. We're 11 months through our fiscal or calendar year, and it looks like in terms of expenses, we're going to be coming out very close to what was budgeted. I don't have November revenues yet, so I can't report on those. Since you've received them, I don't think there's really anything of significance to point out. We've made the transfers to the capital reserve funds and the different trust and agency funds up to the 100% as approved at town meeting. So if there are any questions, otherwise I can move on to the budget.
Will you leave that slide up for just a moment?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I need to get an updated prescription in my glasses.
You can do that.
Okay, under year-to-date expended emergency management.
That was a grant.
Okay.
What's your question, Becky?
Um,
Let her ask.
Oh, yes, that's only fair.
So under year-to-date expended, on the screen, it says 52,000. Whereas on page 9 of 52 of this large document, it says 524,000.
You're on looking at different things. That sheet is the actuals for 2022. The booklet is the 2023.
No, but it says 11/30/22 year-to-date expended.
Happy to say this is correct.
Uh-huh.
The book is not.
Okay.
That's the rules.
Page 9.
Okay, thank you, Becky. And Ken will be getting to the budget next, so.
Perfect. Okay. I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure
Gotcha.
that one of them, I know which one is correct. Okay.
Good question. Thank you. Is anything else?
Okay, budget.
Okay,
Here we go.
We at least get to it before you
All
start.
right.
sure thing. Okay, looking towards 2023, there are many unknowns, starting with what will happen with inflation, fuel and utility costs, the supply chain and labor, and what, if any, additional funding and grants the town will receive from the state or federal governments. With those uncertainties, I want to start by thanking the many individuals involved in the budget process. Neil, Kelly, our department heads and their staffs, many committee members, including yourselves, my fellow select board members, and the many wonderful volunteers in town for all of their hard work and dedication in helping develop this budget and helping to keep the town running as smoothly as it does. As you will hear, in developing this budget, the select board had several goals, namely to maintain the current level of services, minimize the effects of the current level of inflation that we're all feeling, retain a well-qualified staff, and continue to deal with long overdue road maintenance issues, all while recognizing that many of our fellow citizens are stressed financially. So some of the realities of 2023 that we had to deal with were heating fuel up almost 47%, gas and diesel up over 86%, transport and disposal up almost 28%, demolition hauling up 145%, the Houston bond initial payment of $34,000, employee merit pool up 167,000 based on a 6.5% merit pool, health insurance up 37,000, the transfer station mandated lagoon closing with an estimated $1 million price tag that I'll be getting into a lot more detail later, sewer infrastructure needs and road maintenance needs. So to summarize where we ended up, the select board proposal results in an all-in estimated 2023 tax rate increase of 46 cents per thousand or 6.46%. We are also proposing a $1 million 20-year bond for the lagoon closing at the transfer station, of which Webster will pay 25%, and a $2 million 10-year bond for road rebuilding of a large portion of Briar Hill Road. With that, let me turn to the process we followed this year to put this proposal together. Back in August, the department heads started preparing their budgets with the guidance to just focus on needs as not wants as much as possible, and they did an excellent job of that. Next, the department heads met with the town administrator to review their requests. This resulted in the department head's proposed 2023 budget, which was provided to the select board on November 4. Then the select board started the process of meeting with each department head to review and scrutinize their requests, including capital ones. The board also heard the recommendations of the CIP committee. Then the select board began the hard work of trying to balance town needs with affordability to our taxpayers, recognizing that the starting point was the department head's proposed operating budget increase of about 7%. So the select board changes to the department head requests. The select board ended up increasing department heads' operating budget requests by $101,000, following much discussion about the need to put significantly more funds into our roads. Up until about 6 or 7 years ago, funding for roads was the first thing to be reduced when the budgets got tight, as they always do. In 2015, the select board made the decision to revise this approach and commit to increasing the budget line item for shimming and paving by 5% per year. Unfortunately, this increase has not kept up with inflation. Also, over the same time frame, the board has proposed 2 road bonds, which were approved at town meeting. These actions still left us roughly $9 million behind before the latest round of inflation. The board is aware that this issue is only becoming worse and strongly believes that it needs to be dealt with. So in 2023, the select board is proposing a 2-pronged approach, increasing the shimming and paving line item to $530,000, which is a $141,000 increase over the 2022 budgeted amount. This moves this line item closer to the amount needed on an annual basis to maintain our 60 miles of paved roads. And we are proposing a $2 million bond to rebuild part of Briar Hill Road. Okay. The select board also made 4 reductions to the department heads' requests. We reduced part-time call wages for the fire department by $5,000 based on historical actuals. Recreation postage was reduced by $250 as more and more is done online. Recreation special events was reduced from $5,000 to $2,000. This is a new line item where previously the recreation committee had to raise 100% of the funds for special events. And the economic development community relations budget was reduced by $500. The only other change was an accounting adjustment so that 100% of the economic development director's salary and benefits are included within the operating budget and an offsetting revenue amount of 50% of the cost of salary and benefits is paid by the TIF district, and it's added to the revenues, and that provides better transparency for the expense. So now looking at the details of the select board proposal itself. On the revenue side, operating revenue, including the sewer fund, is projected to increase by $70,000 or 1.89% over 2022. However, operating revenue excluding the sewer fund revenue is estimated to increase by only $14,000 for 2023. While this is a very small increase, I'll point out that in 2023, we are projecting to receive about $136,000 less from the State Room and Meals Fund. In 2022, we received a one-time additional payment accounting for the decrease in 2023. On the positive side, revenues are projected to increase in many areas, primarily motor vehicle registration up 40,000, ambulance charges up 15, Webster's share of transfer station costs up 40,000. Revenues from transfer station commercial is projected to go down by 25,000, mainly due to not accepting septic waste. Recycling receipts up 15,000, checking account interest up 13,000 due to higher interest rates, and the revenues from the TIF district to cover 50% of the costs of the economic development director's salary and benefits of $23,683. And as I said before, this is mainly an accounting adjustment. So let me take a moment to explain the sewer fund because it's a little different. This fund covers the sewer operating revenue and is self-funding, with revenues coming from the sewer users and from reimbursement from the Kentuco Village Precinct, who pays half the cost of the water sewer superintendent. Because we have to appropriate the expenditures, it has to be included in the overall numbers, but we've tried to separate it during this presentation for clarity. Sewer users in Kentuco Village Precinct are projected to pay $273,000 in 2023, which is an increase of $55,000 over 2022. The major increase in the sewer budget is for engineering for the existing system. As a heads up, next year we're anticipating having to request a $1 million bond for sludge removal at the facility. Some of these costs are covered by the users, but not all. These costs have increased dramatically because we are anticipating the presence of PFAS. The engineering done this year will prepare the detailed cost estimates. On the positive side, we've received a 100% grant for almost $350,000 for a solar array at the lagoons, which should generate about as much power as the sewer system uses, saving around $20,000 annually based on yesterday's electric rates. Operating budget, moving on to the operating budget, the total operating budget being proposed is $9,027,987, an increase of $744,472, or 8.99% over 2022. Excluding sewer, the select board proposed operating budget is $8,787,863, up $701,695, or a 8.68% increase over that approved for 2022. The major drivers are 6.5% merit pool for our very deserving town employees, so $168,000. Shimming and paving is previously mentioned of $141,000. Costs related to increases in gas, oil, and diesel spread over many departments of $107,000. Transfer station transport and disposal, including demolition, haulage, and tipping fees, mainly due to higher contract rates, resulting in an increase of $94,000. Debt service, including Houston Barn initial payment of debt and interest totaling $51,005. Despite a 9.7% guaranteed maximum rate increase, health insurance costs are anticipated to increase $38,000 or 4.6%, and the lower increase is due to individual employee plan changes. DPW full-time wages has increased, reflecting that we are now at full staff, while last year's budget was reduced to recognize vacancies in early 2022. And this increase is $33,000. On the other side of the ledger, the final payment on a settlement with Fairpoint Communications was made in 2022 of $46,000, so that's done. All of the changes were for less than $20,000, except for engineering costs related to the sewer plant, which are to be paid by the sewer system users. It's worth noting that there are no new full part-time positions included in the proposed budget. Moving on to capital reserves and maintenance trust funds. Total the select board is proposing we put into capital reserve and maintenance trust funds is $851,500, with $756,000 going to the capital reserve fund as recommended by the CIP committee, and $95,500 going into maintenance trust funds. This is $51,000 more going into the capital reserve funds and $95,000 into the trust funds, or $68,500 more going into maintenance trust funds in 2023 than 2022. These expenditures follow our long-established 20-year expenditure plan, but inflation took a huge toll this year, with estimated costs raising dramatically, requiring a reworking of the plan. One of the many examples is the cost of the 10-yard packer, which went up 40% from $112,000 to $159,000. The CIP committee struggled with how to adequately fund required items in a reasonable way, and we again want to thank them for their hard work on this area. And we, as I said, we did adopt their recommendations in total. The appropriations and planned expenditures from capital reserve funds include $200,000 to the fire vehicle replacement CRF, with the largest projected expenditures in 2023 for 24 units of breathing apparatus and replacement of a 20-plus-year-old forestry truck. $220,000 to the highway vehicle replacement CRF, with the largest expenditure planned for 2023 for replacement of 11-year-old one-ton dump truck. $80,000 to the ambulance CRF towards the purchase of a new ambulance in 2024. $75,000 to the transfer station equipment and facilities CRF towards the purchase in 2023 of a 10-yard packer and replacement of trailer one. $50,000 to the recreation facilities CRF towards future expenditures of various town fields. $41,000 to the library building system CRF for replacement of 2 AC systems. $35,000 to sewer equipment sludge removal CRF towards engineering costs in 2023. This amount would be matched by a similar amount by the user's fees. $30,000 for police vehicles replacement CRF, with the next replacement of a police vehicle planned for 2024. $25,000 to the revaluation CRF, with the next reval scheduled for 2024. $10,000 to the police radio replacement CRF, with about $23,000 estimated to be spent in 2023 on replacement radios. $90,000 is being proposed to be added to the town facilities maintenance trust, to be added to the current balance in the fund of about $86,000, and that's to be expended in 2023, primarily for a new roof for the police station, air conditioner compressor replacement at the Slusher Center, replacement of 2 40-year-old furnaces here at Town Hall, repairs to the former rescue building, and replacement of the roof on the Bates building. And finally, $5,500 to the Recreation Facilities Maintenance Trust, with the objective of doing a study and plan for the replacement of the structures at the skate park. Moving on to the fund balance, we're fortunate that this year we have an estimated fund balance available for 2023 of about $610,000. The main reason it is so high is over 250,000 of unanticipated one-time revenues were received from the state. The select board is proposing to use 400,000 in 2023 to offset taxes. While this is a large increase over the amount we used in 2022, in 4 of the prior 5 years, we were able to use at least 330,000 of the fund balance to offset taxes. So to put everything together, as shown on page 1 of your budget book, the select board is proposing that the amount to be raised by taxes in 2023 over 2022 is 388,000 or 6.95%. Taking into an account an increase in valuation of 0.5%, the tax rate estimate is an increase of 46 cents or 6.46%. Okay. We're also proposing 2 bonds, one to address the state mandate to deal with the transfer station lagoon closing, and the second for a $2 million road bond for Briar Hill. If approved, neither would have an impact on tax rates until 2024. So on the lagoon closing bond, for over 40 years, the town followed the same process of putting septic waste into the lagoons at the transfer station. Within the last year-ish, New Hampshire DES notified us that substantial changes would have to be made to obtain the renewal permit, leaving us with no choice but to close the lagoons. We have been working with DES since that time, tested the soils, determined that PFAS is present, and are now, my understanding is that Novus Engineering is putting a plan together for the cleanup. And the only estimate we have of the cost from them is about $1 million to appropriately deal with the contaminated soil. Unfortunately, the lagoons are near the closed landfill, so monitoring is already taking place. The estimated cost for our 75% share of the $1 million bond for 20 years at 5% would result in total interest costs of about $394,000. In year 1, our share, Hopkinton's share of the payment would be about $75,000, declining by nearly half in year 10. The other 25% of the payment would be paid by Webster, consistent with our transfer station cost sharing agreement. And of course, we will continue to search for grants to cover some of the cost. The other road bond we're talking about is the road 2023 road bond. And as I mentioned previously, roads have been seriously underfunded for many years. While there are a number of roads in town that need to be rebuilt, right now our priority is to rebuild Briar Hill Road. The estimated cost to completely rebuild those parts not previously addressed is $4.5 million. The $2 million bond we're now proposing will only allow us to rebuild a portion of the road, but we don't think that the town could afford a larger bond at this time. A $2 million bond maturing in 10 years with an estimated interest rate of 5% would require total interest costs of $550,000. Year 1 payment would be about $300,000 or 37.86 cents per thousand impact on the tax rate, or about a 5% increase on the town portion of the tax rate. By year 10, this would decline to about 26.5 cents impact. So as I catch my breath, I'm willing to try to respond to any questions.
All right, thank you, Ken. So we'll have questions and some discussion by the committee, and then I'm going to open a public comment period, and then we'll do that.
Ken, the lagoon, we have $250,000 to do the cleaning.
It's not a quote, it's an estimate of the engine or something. Yes, and it's a work in progress.
It's gonna be a big, whatever. Surplus site or like something that surplus site, it's gonna be a big site that's gonna have to be cleaned up presumably, right? Like,
As I understand it, there were a number of lagoons there.
There are 5 different pits
Mhm.
that were rotated around.
yeah,
And because PFAS is found, either the contaminated soil needs to be trucked to Canada, or the hope and the less expensive option is to do a lined landfill on site. And and those are the things we're working with DES as well as getting that planning and estimating the full cost.
so that could easily be much more than a million, I'm guessing.
That is possible. But this is, the engineer feels that's a reasonable number.
That number was developed on closing it and trucking the waste somewhere else, I assume.
No, that number is based on keeping it on site and lining the land, lining it there.
That's sort of the minimum we could afford under the guesstimates.
Yeah, but DS has indicated that probably is the best way to go. So, but that isn't, they need to see the actual plan and approve that. So I don't want to speak for certainly what they'll approve or not.
The timeline for the plan being developed.
We should have it within the next couple months.
Is it? Sorry, and then do you have a sense of what the timeline for the DES? I'm curious about the timing of moving forward with the bond this year. You know, how they're just given what we've got with the town's overall proposal and then what we know is coming from the school. You know,
Our
what,
sense is DS isn't going to want us to wait another full year. I suppose we could do that. And if it doesn't pass, we would have to do that. But the costs are probably just going to keep going up.
Sure.
So, DS thinks and we agree that the sooner we clean this up, the better.
Are there funds that come in to assist us, either federally or?
We did apply for one grant that we did not receive. So we'll keep working on that. There are funds out there, but the funds don't seem to be allocated towards this type of cleanup, although there is PFAS, so there are PFAS funds out there, so we will look everywhere we possibly can.
And have they, in the study, and they've acknowledged that we need to do the cleanup, do we know the origination of the PFAS, and is there a way to prevent further?
So basically what the lagoons were is when your own septic system is pumped, this is where we took in the sludge, and it was pretty common practice. This was a licensed facility to do this. You renew your license every 5 years, and the regulations really haven't changed, but the way they enforce them has. Or maybe they do enforce them or did enforce them. So it basically comes from residential septic and possibly some businesses in town too. And pretty much you're guaranteed almost any waste stream has PFAS in it because there is so much of it everywhere.
Thank you.
And worst case scenario, like if we, let's say we said, like Mark was just saying, let's say we said, okay, we're gonna try to put this off for another year. Then the worst case scenario would be this, the state does some testing and says this is now at a health risk that it has to be done right now. In which case, what would we do if the budget had already passed and the state said, we're not going to give you a year? How does that play out?
That's a good question.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
They try to enforce, they order it cleaned up and they do
We'd all
everything
rather
under their
shelter it.
authority to enforce it, so.
At worst, we'd be fined, I would assume.
Well,
At worst, we would be fined.
but it is possible.
and you know, this has been an active use lagoon until just recently.
Until
Oh, we just got this
Beginning of
done.
this year.
And then where's sewage disposal happening now?
So most local companies go to Concord and they accept it into their system. Our official agreement is actually with Allenstown. And they accept waste too. So we have to provide, yes, with our agreement and that's,
And presumably that's an increase in cost to truck it.
and not to us,
Oh.
to the homeowner.
Yeah,
Right.
the private.
who's paying for it.
Okay,
We lost the revenue because we did charge
right.
for accepting.
Neil, could any money come out of the sludge removal sewer equipment capital reserve fund? There's it looks like there's gonna be 100,000 in there next year.
Which is for the engineering for the removal of the sludge from that system, which also most likely has PFAS. in it.
Yeah,
So-
two different systems.
Oh, I know, but I didn't know because it's sludge removal capital reserve, if you could.
Yeah, the one thing we work on is we might be able to take the sludge and put it all in one place and line it together versus taking the sludge out of the waste treatment plant and trucking it to Canada.
Yeah.
Canada seems to be where it's going. I don't know how long that will last. It's kind of like nuclear waste. Who really wants it? So the first payment comes out in 2024. So. And it is, and the sewer. Webster does pay 25% under.
Ken, can you give a little more, Neil, a little more context around the road? So the overall financial need for the roads. I remember, Don, it was maybe a year or two ago that we had that. We heard, that there was an overall need of $8.5 million or whatever it was when the town did the bonding at that point in time. Do we know what the current estimate of the overall?
The last thing we had was, around 9 million, and that was a couple of years ago. So what we're seeing about the cost to, asphalt and whatever is shot up. So, I don't know what the 9 million is now. It's gone up considerably. We've done some roads in there. But, as I explained, that we felt we have to really push the schedule that much more.
Right now, it's at least double the 9.
At least double.
It's doubled.
And that's after doing the 3 Briar Hill Road culverts, which are done, the Stickney Hill Road culvert, which is done, the Kearsarge Road culvert, which is done, which we've done with those bonds. And I think those are the main culverts, but those were in that list and are all off the list, and the amount is still astronomically high. It's really frustrating, as with so many things, the costs, how dramatically they've gone up this year, especially this year.
Putting it in perspective, I think the current costs are $1 million a mile for a road like Briar Hill. Now, back in the day when I was a kid, when the interstate went through here, the interstate cost, not counting the bridges, but the interstate cost was $1 million a mile. So that's how this thing has changed.
So Briar Hill is kind of the worst shape of our types of roads. So it needs to be rebuilt when it's done, and it's $1.3 million per mile. That's a 3-mile road. So other roads don't. You figure we have 60 miles of paved road, and you really should be treating every paved road to some extent every 10 years. So you really should be doing 6 miles of road a year. They all don't have to be built. Some can be chip sealed, which is really comparatively inexpensive. Like we did Granite Valley and Spring Street this past year with chip seal. If you can do that, it's much less expensive. But the roads that need to be rebuilt have to be rebuilt. And then once they're rebuilt, they won't have to be rebuilt again, but in 10 years, they'll need to be top coated and the ongoing maintenance.
If the goal is 6 miles per year, what are we averaging?
So 6 miles a year, probably we should be in the 800,000 to 1 million range. And this year in the budget with the increase that was added to paving and shimming, we're at 530. 530.
So even if we went to 530, we'd be falling behind significantly every year.
Right, which is why the board decided to increase it as dramatically as.
Right, I mean, even with the increase,
Even with the increase.
like
we're
going from
still-
420 to 530, we'd still be falling behind to the tune of 300,000.
Right,
And that would just be breaking even.
because the board had committed
So it's like quicksand.
a number of years ago, they committed to raise that 5%. And that really wasn't getting us anywhere because
And we also did, 2 previous road bonds in the last few years.
Can I ask the question? How much does it cost, or I have 2 questions. When you say completely rebuild the road, does that mean remove all of the existing pavement?
it does, and putting in a new base.
So how
A
much,
lot of these roads are old cow paths, and what's under them are stumps and rocks, and which is why.
so how much does it cost per mile to build a dirt road?
Well, if you have the correct base, it's everything but the pavement.
Okay,
Depending on the road, it costs more to maintain a gravel road. If you have like Briar Hill, the amount of traffic that it gets, it would cost much more to maintain a gravel road than a paved road.
so the costs are spread out instead of all at once.
Well, with all the traffic on a gravel road, you have to maintain it constantly and grade it, and it would most likely not be in great shape a lot because of all the traffic. Really don't have any gravel roads that need to be paved that are at that point. This is just really maintaining the ones that are already paved.
Right, I was thinking about going in reverse.
Well, the other thing with dirt roads, you also need to put chemicals on it regularly to keep the dust down. So that people don't basically like chemicals on roads.
Well, asphalt's full of chemicals.
Well, yeah, but it's not something to keep bleeding off.
Well, right, but then we seal coat it or we chip coat it. I mean, it's not like it just is put down once and left alone.
Well, that's sort of it. Sort of it.
Well, I know, but it's a petroleum product. I mean, it's hyper processed, I mean, it's not like rock.
I think what this in total perspective, to get everything built, if we could theoretically do it all at once, it would be 15 to 20 million to get them all up to where they should be in the perfect world. And there's another $1 million a year to keep those roads, if they're in perfect shape, treating them each year. So we're way behind the curve.
And we're not alone. I'm not sure there's any city or town, state that is up where to that level.
Are these roads, because they're all town roads, not eligible for any of the federal infrastructure funding? I mean, that all went to the state's 10-year plan.
So far that we did receive a little bit of additional block grant, which will be used for paving. And the state gives us block grant, but really the federal funding went to the state. And then largely you're going to see it go into 93, not in the cities and towns.
I don't know if this is a number that we could get, but it seems that oftentimes we say the elephant in the room is the lack of funds coming into the towns from the state. And I know in past years that we have lost quite a bit of money. The state has cut back on assisting us with road maintenance and that kind of thing. Do we know about how much we've lost from state funding, how much they have held back from the towns in recent years? I mean, I just feel that deficit is definitely affecting obviously where our taxes are going to and why our roads have been put on the burner because we're not getting the help. And I do recall at one of the budget meetings that was mentioned, that, you know, they pulled back on what the word was.
So for example, there was a time when the state paid 35% of the retirement for police and firefighters and teachers. The school was even more affected. And that funding stopped. There also used to be shared revenue. I would have to done that. I know we have that
I
information.
don't want to put
We
you
could
all
provide.
that work, but I think it's worth noting that we have a deficit for a reason in many ways. Not just that our roads are deteriorating, but that the towns are not getting the assistance that, like you said, it's going to go to 93. But we're not being budgeted for the town's use of these roads too, and towns need help. So I think it's important to know it's not just the schools that are being affected by the way that our state is run.
I knew, for example, municipal bridge aid, the state budget $6 million a year. And that's for every municipality in the state. So there's just, that doesn't even come close.
No.
There are many $1 million or more bridges that need to be replaced. Well, Tyler Bridge was close to that by the time. And that wasn't even a full replacement.
Do you know if there's a concerted effort on the part of municipalities, like through the municipal association, to have this? I mean, there's always a conversation about more aid to coming to municipalities, but just given the circumstances that have played out over the past year and a half, with the significant, the dramatic increase in the cost of road maintenance, combined with this massive amount of federal funding.
The basically lobbyists for the municipal association have certainly been working on this. We've had numerous meetings and they've really been a good clearinghouse for federal funds coming in, as well as advocating at the state level for where those funds go. I'm not sure it's enough, but I'm not sure it could ever be enough.
Yeah.
I think I'd just add to what Neil said on the municipal association. I think a lot of they're trying to do is just hold the line. Yeah, as opposed to, state's going to reduce even further in different areas.
Yeah, I just think the windfall from the infrastructure bill is pretty unique, a unique opportunity to maybe do more than hold the line, but maybe that is the best that you can hope for.
Yeah.
And Ken mentioned the extra
Yes, meals.
That came in because that formula was settled, although it's much less than the towns were guaranteed a number of years ago. We did receive some extra block grant because there was a state surplus for fiscal year 22. But that came from state funds.
Other questions for Ken?
Yes, I just have one. Could you please clarify on the solar array, the $350,000 grant that we got the solar, is that for the sewer ponds on Maple Street?
Correct.
And where would those arrays go?
I believe right across the street from the lagoons.
Okay, thank you.
And then I believe they were going to be more or less sized to meet the electric demand of the lagoons of the sewer.
And is there any updates on the solar arrays at the transfer station?
Sure, taking a step back, when town meeting approved centering it to a long-term contract, it was a 3-year agreement where they would be looking into Olive would be looking into what they wanted to do and all, and they've been working with Webster also. And at the end of the 3 years, they had the option to extend that for another year. Back in November, they did extend it for another year. So it's still in their court, and they're still progressing. I'm anticipating that they'll be, reaching out to us, a lot more this year and where we've reestablished a town energy committee, that committee will be involved in that also. So at this point, I'm knock on wood, I'm still hoping that everything comes to fruition and we end up several years down the road getting 150,000 a year in revenues.
Is there more room at the facility on Maple Street for more solar arrays if we wanted to add them there for like some other town buildings perhaps could be piggybacked onto that system?
I think there's more room. I don't know about, net metering with regards to that location or anything like that.
Did look at whether we could connect them also to the highway garage, which is right there. So,
Well, I
but
know-
that's not what the grant's for. The grant pays for the sewer system. The goal is we really should end up being the first carbon neutral wastewater treatment plant. So
Well, I know the school last month, we were talking about they were talking about putting solar arrays on the roof. And, from my experience with solar, putting them on the ground might be more cost effective. So I didn't know if that might be a good spot for that.
And where I was talking about the energy committee, and we'll be looking into whether other sites in town that either we could lease out or that it would make sense from our own facilities to put solar on.
Thank you.
Can this proposed array at the lagoons, it differs from the one at the transfer station. This is one that the town would own. Right, we will, yeah. So
This is
transfer
a
station
sewer.
leasing land essentially and getting more or less, in this case, we're gonna own it outright.
And would be used for electricity at the sewer lagoons.
And is that anticipated construction cost in the 23 budget? Or-
It's a grant.
It's 100% funded grant.
Right, but I mean, we will still incur an expense, we just have offsetting revenue.
Right.
Or will we not incur the expense? It will essentially be funded off our books.
Because it's a grant, it probably will be funded, not showing in the budget.
It won't, okay.
Right.
It's noted in the spreadsheets, but just as a note at the end of them, I believe.
Other questions?
I have just one more question about the PFAS removal. And I know this is just at the beginning. But is there any communication that's going to go out to the town about the PFAS prior to the budget discussion?
We should have a lot more information before the public hearing, for the budget,
Mhm.
and then which is ahead of town meeting.
Okay, great. Okay,
Here, what, right now, we know it's present, but they're working on all the analysis that we should receive relatively soon.
right. And the question as to Jonathan's question about, we should know how much we're gonna get fined per day, or, if we eventually do have a formal citation about it or something from Department of Environmental Services.
I think that would only be if we don't do anything. We're working with them, and there's not going to be fines or anything. We were permitted, we were doing what we were permitted for.
Mhm.
There's no fines or anything unless we don't clean it up.
Mhm.
If they order it cleaned up, then, and we don't follow that order, that's when you run into that issue. But there's no pending fines or anything, provided we work with them and meet the requirements.
So how often was the soil tested? Or I guess, how much time lapsed between when we didn't show PFAS and then when we did?
It was never tested for PFAS.
Okay,
PFAS has probably been there for years, just like every other system, but that wasn't something that was tested for.
Ken, could you speak for a minute about just how the select board landed at 6.5% on the merit pool?
We tried to balance the rate of inflation and affordability to the town. You know, I personally would have liked to see something higher, but we thought that was a reasonable number to arrive at.
Anybody else?
I just want to say I experienced your whole process, the select board, and I want to say you guys did a really good job and had some really tough decisions through the whole process.
I was going to say you're a glutton for punishment.
All right, Ken, thank you very much. And why don't you come back over to your
Gladly.
regular seat? You'll still be on the hot seat, though. Appreciate all the work that you and the select board and all the town, Neil and the town put into this, developing this.
I just want to note that Kelly, our finance director, Kelly, had unfortunately was out sick today, so, or otherwise she would be here.
Please express our appreciation to her.
And let me just give another accolade to Neil. It's invaluable in this process as well as everything else in town.
Take care.
Neil is awesome.
Okay, so we will open a public comment period specific to the proposed 2023 town budget. We'll have another one later in the meeting for the rest of the items. Talk about the town budget in the later one as well, if you want. If you have any comments or questions that you want to share, please come up to the table and state your name and your address, and we'd love to hear from you.
This is the hot seat, right?
Is that what you have to say?
It'll be hot. Ooh, this is well. My name is Bonnie Christie. I live at 302 Smithfield Road in Kentucky. I was smart enough to put my reading glasses in the car and not smart enough to remember to bring them in with me. Does anybody have a pair of reading glasses that?
Oh. Look at that.
Sorry if they're dirty. I need a string around the neck. No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Not a bad idea.
Even with the glasses, I can't necessarily read my own writing, but I have 5 comments to make. And most of them are about the transfer station and the PFAS problem, which we've known about for a few years now. And I've been very concerned about it. And it just seems like one of those issues that's sort of off in left field and nobody's really doing anything about it. But let me start out by saying I realize that the whole budget process is huge, and I really am very appreciative of what you guys put into it. And within that budget process, this issue at the transfer station with the PFAS is a bear. I mean, it's a tough one, and we didn't see it coming, and now we have to deal with it. But
Bonnie, may I just interject just to clarify? You mean that the PFAS in the lagoons at the transfer station? You're specifically in the lagoon, in the soil.
the overall inadequate lagoon
Okay.
septage system, as well as the PFAS within it.
Thank
I'm just going to back up and just make one other quick comment that doesn't have anything to do with the PFAS and the lagoons, and that I think I heard you say, Ken, that we're looking to replace 2 furnaces in the town hall.
Correct.
Which are 40 years old. And I wonder if that means that we're going to replace those furnaces with another 40 years of fossil fuel burning. Is that what we're looking to do, or are we looking at non-fossil fuel heat? Or could that be included in the,
It can be included in what we look at.
yeah. I hope it will be, especially in light of the fact that we now have an energy committee and we're talking about energy and conservation and all that. I feel that's super important. We went through that same issue at the schools where we realized that we're spending all this money on rebuilding the schools, which it took a long time to get the bonds for that. And then we were starting to replace heating systems with more fossil fuel heating systems, which can go on for another 30, 40 years. So that's a concern.
And
But-
Bonnie, were you thinking of something, recognizing this is historic building?
Well, I'm not an energy expert, but I'm just hoping that we're looking to not rely 100% on fossil fuels for the next 40 years, because
Okay,
Yeah.
there are options out there that, be very interesting.
yeah, I hope the Energy Committee can look into that. That would be great. On the septic lagoons, I don't know if other people find this alarming, what we've just heard tonight about not only the fact that there are 5 lagoons that have been just filling up with this stuff for, I think you said 40 years, something like that. Also that they're full of PFAS, and PFAS isn't the only thing that's in them. And then it's going to cost at a minimum, probably $1 million to resolve what we know now is the problem. We don't even know what the whole problem is yet. I find it very alarming. PFAS is a big problem. They're bad chemicals. And I remember saying last year at this budget meeting last year that I hope the town starts to take waste much more seriously. And, I think it would have been a huge savings to hire somebody at the transfer station who is a qualified, trained professional to deal with these issues and up to date on these issues. I think in the long run, it would be cheaper to have that person on site and to be looking ahead and aware of these than to get $1 million cleanup problems. And it's not just the $1 million. I mean, those chemicals are going to be there indefinitely. And it's upsetting to me. Let's see. Also, and we supposedly have been following our permit down there, but our permit was for us to put residential septage into those lagoons. It did not include commercial and industrial, but commercial and industrial, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've read from DES, that anything and everything was going in there. There was no quality control. We knew how many gallons because we charged per gallon for the septage to be dumped there, but we didn't know where it was coming from or what was in it from the sources. And, there's a certain amount of PFAS that probably shows up in a residential system, but there's definitely more PFAS in a commercial or an industrial system, like when things are being washed down into the sewage at a plant and then pumped out. So, we need to be really paying attention to the details and dotting the i's and crossing the t's on these permits, because there are reasons behind these things. Regarding PFAS, it's not just the PFAS in the septage lagoons, but the Conservation Commission is working with a natural resource consultant to do a natural resource inventory. And I went out on one of her field study days with her, and she was looking at a lot of wetlands. We went over the bank on the other side of the transfer station where you come around the corner after you pass the recycling, coming around the corner to go over to the hopper. That whole bank down there, which goes straight down into Deer Meadow Brook, is littered with trash. And that trash is also full of PFAS. And some of it comes because of the design of our recycling system, where it's just open bays and things blow out and things fall out of people's trucks and stuff. But a lot of it also comes in the winter when we plow And everything gets plowed over there in a huge pile, and anything that's on the ground gets plowed in with the snow and just melts down the bank. And I wonder if, well, first of all, I hope that we can get that cleaned up, and I don't know how to budget for that. But the second thing is, I think we should be putting up some sort of a snow fence or some barrier so that this doesn't keep happening. Because that's a beautiful wetland down there. It's full of wildlife. It runs right into the Kentucky River eventually. So that's something to think about too.
Bonnie,
Yeah,
just interject, just to be sensitive about people's time. So just as much as possible, if you can tailor your comments to what you feel like we as a budget committee should be, in our responsibility around the budget proposal put in front of us.
yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is these are the reasons behind why I think the budget committee should be looking at funding the transfer station differently and more effectively. And there's never any other forum to talk about these things. There just isn't one. But I hear you, and I'm almost done. On the $94,000, you said we're looking at an increase in $94,000 about for hauling and tipping fee, the transfer station. Again, it would be a savings if we had a qualified professional and if the town had a waste management plan. So that instead of every year we see and Rich, you know this, we've been talking about this, the waste load is going up and up and up, and we pay more per ton every year to put it in the landfill. If we had a plan for how we're going to do source reduction, cut back on the waste that shows up at the transfer station in the first place, and secondly, what can we divert into recycling and start some composting, get the food waste out of that? That would be immediate savings for the town. And I hope that the budget committee will look at that. And my last request is that I guess this is a select board job, but the Hopkinton Webster Refuse Disposal Committee, we've brought it up a number of times and nothing ever happens with it. We have willing volunteers and working volunteers from Hopkinton. There are none from Webster. They all quit and nothing has been done about replacing them. And that's the committee that has on paper, the legal responsibility for setting up management and overseeing the budget and so forth at the transfer station. And
It's recommendations to the select board. It's not their thought.
well, we can go back and forth on that, but it's to work with the select board and
That's-
yes,
That's.
right.
You use the
Let me
word
say
compensation.
let me say responsibility. I'll take that word back. Let's say responsibility. I just urge you to get that committee. If that committee is just never going to work, let's figure out what is going to work, because we're looking at millions of dollars here that can be avoided, and it's just going to get worse every year. So thank you for indulging me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
May I say something?
Please.
If it's okay with you, Bonnie. I share your concern about PFAS as well, and our committee did talk about PFAS, but the regulations only came on very recently regarding them. They didn't even have a way to test for them until a few years ago. The other thing I want to say is our septage now is going to Concord and Allenstown, but those systems cannot catch the PFAS. They process the sewage and then the PFAS goes right through the system and right into the river. And what our committee was discussing with our system that we had at the transfer station is that those PFAS stay there. They don't go out into the waterways, and we were able to, at least for the last years, catch them and hold on to them. So it's kind of a no-win situation with PFAS, because the
Right.
feds in the state don't have any way to catch them. And they didn't even have any regulations on how much was safe.
Yeah. Yeah, and the flip side of that is that when DES went down there, took a look around, and again, they've been renewing our permit and they have skin in this game too, but the new inspector looked around and said, we've never seen anything like this anywhere in the state. What is going on down here? And that's when they shut us down.
That's not true, because there are numerous towns that have followed the same process.
That's what the DES director of residual management told me
That's,
in a phone call.
that's how the inspectors said, or any of the other DES.
Okay,
I just
thank you.
make sure.
Thank you, Bob.
That's.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to make some comments at this time? Is there anybody online? Neil?
There's no one on.
Okay,
I think there's probably somebody on there. Just not here.
there's just not,
No one in that audience.
no one in Hopkinton online, so. Okay, we will close the public comment period at this time. And thank you again, Ken and Neil. And we're gonna switch over to you, Norm,
Great.
the school district update.
Give you a little bit of a breakdown. I'm going to go through, Mark, I'm going to go through our financial report for October. I'm going to follow up some questions that budget committee asked. Some grant information that we received last night from Michelle. And then I'm going to turn over to Mr. Quinn and Rob on our budgeting process. Real quick, I know you guys were here for the town. So Neil, could you put up our Hopkinton School District memo? I'm just gonna, Michelle, kind of just. Thank you so much. Yeah. So just to give you guys a little bit of a quick recap of what's going on in October. That Michelle mentions is revenues coming in anticipated at this time. We had an additional payroll this year compared to last year at this time. We have not received grant information from the state to allocate to staff that are in the grant for those grants. She hopes to have that information for the next financial. One thing that's important that I really want to point out for the budget committee is that at the current moment, we still look to have under 100,000 as unreserved fund balance to reduce taxes for 2023. If you go to the next page, Neil, real quick. I want everyone to look at the anticipated fund balance in comparison to last year. No, right there's fine. When you guys look at last year at this time, we were at 371,000. And right now we're at 73,000. A goal that we had is to have that number lowered. And the goal is to continue to show progress and commitment to the town that we are continuing to not have that be a high number. So I thought that was really important to share. One other thing that was on the first page that I can discuss is in our last meeting, you guys talked about whether or not we were going to have a food deficit for the year, and we will have that. In our budgeting process last year, if you remember, it was estimated in order to cover food services, we need to budget $150,000 in order to accommodate that. Last year, we did only 75,000. So of course, since we didn't budget the other part, we will be paying it through the other ways that we had through the surplus. And then this year for the budgeting process, we'll be having the additional 75,000. So we'll be at 150 whole, which is proper budgeting for the district. Those are the highlights from the statement that I saw that was relevant to share with you guys tonight. I'm happy to take some questions before I move on to a couple updates that I have to share with you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I feel like maybe we had the same question last month,
Yeah,
so forgive
I
me.
have it on you.
But on this report on the food service where it says sales continue to be a challenge this year with only 3 reduced qualified families eligible for some assistance. Can you just unpack that statement for me? Feels like there's a couple of things lumped in there, but maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I don't want to say I assume that you know, but the past couple of years, food was covered 100% by the federal government. So that program ended. And so now you're back to what I'll call your standard purchases. So that is, if you qualify for free and reduced, there's levels. So either you get a percentage off or you get completely free. So those are covered. Then you have your regular purchases. So I'm going to use my family as an example. I have one that packs a lunch every day. So she's no longer purchasing anything at school. So you lose that revenue of a child that might not be purchasing chips or à la carte options, so to speak. So that's where those deficits start to come in if you're not having the sales to make up.
And is our revenue lower than budgeted? So I recognize only half of the true deficit was budgeted, because we're stepping up to it.
Right.
But is the revenue coming in lower than was budgeted?
Yes, it's lower. Yeah, it's even lower than what
Or
we're.
do we anticipate the deficit will be more than 75,000? I guess. It's
Yep.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions on that part?
And well, about the food service, I know we did circles around that a lot last year. If we're gonna talk about it again, I want to bring Michelle. She's the expert in that areas. All right.
Just a broad stroke question on that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume that as inflation hits everybody on food costs, that also.
So I asked her to look into that. Yeah, because we get billed, yeah, so there's certain products that we buy directly from government, right? So we get government costs and then there's others. So that's a good question, Jonathan. I think we can evaluate that, yeah. On if that inflation cost on purchases of foods is actually contributing to our debt.
That's what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
like, are people like, I can cut, it
Yeah.
costs me less.
It used to be $1 per bag of chips, now it's $1.50, whatever. So, yeah, we can take a look. I'll see if the prices have changed.
It feels like it's the theme for the town.
You're gonna hear from me in about 5 minutes, so.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. So I always like delivering good news to you guys, right? That's always good things. So just to let you go, last night we learned that we received a grant for all 3 schools to get $3,500 from the seeds in order to do an energy audit. So that will be done later in 2023, free, no cost to us. This will go towards the committee later down the road for us to look at and make some evaluation and all that with Jim. But it's great that we were able to get that at 100%. So we got news about that.
Well, who did you say the grant came from?
It's called SEEDS. What's SEEDS stand for?
Wrong guy, sorry.
Yeah, I know.
It's through Eversource.
Yeah, Eversource SEEDS. Yeah.
Yeah,
If it's just for schools or the town could.
it might be municipality. It might be. Yeah, you can email Jim Rizicki, the facilities director. He can help you out, or you can.
And I have a contact that I reached out to that helped me arrange this, who actually was able to get this money set aside. They communicate directly with Eversource, and then it was sent to the superintendent to approve.
You could provide them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because the energy committee was talking about having the town do that on all towns.
Yes, I will send that information over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. The other good news is we received $105,000 grant from the state for safety and security. So I think that's great. That will be unpacked later, what it will be used for. So that's great to hear.
If I can just add to that real quick.
Go for it.
So it was a competitive grant. I just want to point it out there. So I would say every district in the state of New Hampshire applied. And obviously the quality of the grant that Mr. Rizicki wrote, the huge bonus to us for qualification. We qualified for 80% of what we applied for. So it was pretty impressive.
This is just great news. So good news comes in 3, right? So the other thing is, now that the tax rate has been set for the school district, we came in 16 cents less. So that was really great to hear. So that was the other part that I thought was really good to share to the budget committee. As you know, in every meeting, it's always my goal to answer your questions. You have a lot of questions. I think they're great. And I always bring them back to the board, and I get feedback from the board because we want to be in unison on our answers. So I'm going to go through a couple of questions that you guys asked, and then we'll unpack them real quick. So we already discussed food services. Thank you, Mike, for that. One of the questions was, how close is the school district to having all new roofs? CIP is working on that. So that's in their eyesight.
I'll have that by January. All right. I don't know whose question that was. Sorry, I was looking because he looked at you.
I think it was done.
Okay. All right. How about January?
The balance from the bond project, will that reduce impact in future budgets, the tax impact in future budgets? Yes. It will.
What was the question?
The question was, the balance from the bond project, the remaining funds that the school board approved. Will that reduce the tax impact in future budgets? Yes. If we went through CIP and
Yeah.
allocated those funds to that, so of course, it's gonna help us with not asking for as much, potentially based on that, so. That was great to hear. The two other questions I'm gonna have Mike unpack, because Mark, your question about is there an alternative model to deliver the education we want at a lower cost, and you could explore other ways. I did talk to Mike last night in the school board meeting about this, and he had some comments about that. And then the other thing that we're gonna break down tonight is the breakdown in the savings from our hiring. It was brought up multiple times in this meeting on how we were able to have savings in our budgeting process with the hiring practices. Well, the one that does the hiring practice is the superintendent of schools. And so tonight, he's gonna show you guys a Excel spreadsheet of how he got to those savings on the replacements and the differences and all that. So I'm gonna turn over to Mike, who's gonna answer those two questions the best he can. And then after that, they have a brief, very brief presentation on where we are in our budgeting process, just so you guys have a feel for where we are in our process. So I'll turn over to you, Mike.
So the alternative model, that Mark, was that you?
Is there an alternative model?
Yeah. Oh,
Can you help me? Yes, last night when Norm,
for you to come and answer that question.
I want to give you answers.
So I'm gonna scroll back a couple of years ago when the school budget was voted down twice. And people were feeling, financial strain in our community, as they certainly are now. And so the conversation I think that started with Steve was we are a property valuation challenged community with a single town school district, and costs are going to go up, not unreasonably. And so we have a particular model of how the school provides education, and it may be the norm, somewhere within the norm. Sure. And I think the question at that time was, are there alternative ways to deliver a high quality education, the quality of education that I think people in this community have regularly affirmed that they want through how they vote. But are there alternative models out there that might slow the rate of growth of the budget? And we're not educational experts, so it was more of a question. And at that point, it was toward the end of Steve's tenure, so it was really, he was trying to manage through a pandemic. Sure. But I think that was the genesis of the question, and how would those even be explored? Because we have I think we're going to continue to have an ongoing challenge in our community to provide the education that people want, the whole experience people want, we want, kids want, at an acceptable rate of tax impact growth.
So that helps. Thank you. And to kind of discuss where we are in our profession in education, we're the bad guys, because we are the biggest chunk of the tax bill, no matter where we are in the state of New Hampshire, no matter where we are. And it's not intended to be the bad guys, as you mentioned. So what we're doing, or what we're currently doing now, is almost kind of what you're talking about, but I don't want to take too many steps ahead. And I've been here now 2 years, and you've heard how I've identified early areas of some areas that we need to work on. One has been curriculum. One has been the middle high school and what we offer. Are we, and Rob, I think you trying not to laugh, but I think you gave the resort example last time, right? So are we operating it as a junior college, or are we a public high school? So we're really diving into what we offer. Are we running classes with 5 kids when we shouldn't be maybe not offering that class, and running classes? So that evaluation is going on, and what it leads to is other words I've been using this year is level staffing, right? So if I hire you, you're going to teach 5 classes, not 6. So that helps level that wave that Hopkinton's experiencing with staffing or what we're providing. And so what may happen when you talk about alternative education is, give me a class to pick on.
I mean, you can talk about the AP offerings as a, I'm gonna just keep rolling.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so, you know, when we think about APs, that's a big part of why we get all of these accolades. We have a very high number of APs that are offered. A lot of students take them and you tend to score. well.
You got to tell everyone what APs is. It's our rule.
It's true, that just cost me a buck.
Yep.
Advanced placement courses, integrated kids can, if you score a certain level, receive college credit, which I'm thankful for because it saved me a semester of tuition at UNH. So rather than every AP course being offered every year, some would cycle. So for instance, in the social studies department, one year it would be AP US history, and then next year it'd be AP world, and they would just flip flop. So kids would still have the opportunity to do it. You would just be able to save a section by doing it.
And then saving a section could equate to what we're paying right now. Sometimes we pay teachers to teach 6 classes instead of 5. And so that's how we start to level up on our stuff. The other part that when you talk about alternative learning is if we only have kids in 3 that are registering for the class or 4 or 5, VLAX is since what we lived through, there's more offerings there. So we might be directing our students now to take that online course to supplement what we can no longer offer or not necessarily need to offer to them. So there is that reevaluation piece of what we're delivering it, how we're delivering it, what we're delivering. And I think it's really starting to rein in some of the stuff that we do. The breakdown I'm going to save for after we get through because it kind of coincides with what we're delivering. So would you like I don't need to make it a one-off when we're going to hear it anyways. That's
Okay.
right.
So last night the board met. Again, we're 1 meeting behind, to be clear. And so we did a quick presentation to really kind of walk you through some of the stuff that's changed since we were here last time. When we did this last year, we came here in a couple steps. We wanted to show you an all-in budget. Then we came back with kind of like what we're kind of tweaking at, and then we came with a final budget, keeping you guys engaged, what's going on, the tough choices we got to make. So I'm going to have Mike walk us through you guys this real quick, just to show you what we've done. And I'm glad Mr. NATO is here from Finance Committee. Are you doing my like this?
I did it in slusher, so
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
I'll just give you a point. Yeah, you can start on slide 2, it'd be great. All right, so as Norm does often, he steals my thunder, we're a meeting behind. So this time last year, when I came to you in December, I was able to target a tax rate for you guys. We're not there yet. We're a meeting behind because of some stuff that happened in our offices in November with people being out and stuff happening. So we had to, we're basically behind by a single meeting. But what I'll be able to get you is kind of the number that we've settled on. Now, you spoke to Rob and Norm last meeting, and the number that the last time they were here, we've already come down from that number. So from our November 15th meeting, when we presented us as an administrative team to the board said, we need you to go back and essentially target about $380,000 less. And I'll go through those steps as we get there. So this new number, when we get to the end, is what was presented to my board last night. They have some homework to do between now and when we meet on January 3rd. Then we'll start to settle in. So the next time you see us, you'll have that really solid tax impact number. Finance meets next week, so that's a big step for us. So that's why, just in case when we get there, just know that there's still a little bit of work to do for us. All right. So this year, going into what we're doing, the philosophy is what's going to impact on all stakeholders. I don't want to bore you, so I'm going to kind of move quickly on this stuff. Improved operations is huge for us. It's something I've been trying to hammer home on our structure and organization, as well as the accountability piece on all fronts. And then we continue to reduce that surplus. So remember, if you remember last year, I said we had a 3-year goal. So technically, this will be my second year of trying to reduce that surplus. So I'll continue to reiterate that the numbers that you will eventually see out of our audit was not my budget, right? It wasn't my budget. That was the previous administration's budget. So what you're seeing this year on that targeted surplus right now at under 100, granted, there's some grant stuff out there. We're already starting to reduce that excessive surplus. All right. So strive for level funding on non-fixed costs. As we just kind of talked about with Jonathan, inflation is going to drive some of that. Continue to move away from our large surplus. There's not a better place for this poll when people are presenting. Establish,
It's like Fenway.
establish long-term planning, maintain tax rate, and then bottom line. So remember that bottom line budgeting. If I ask for 20, I'm going to spend 20. That's the goal. Our key budget drivers, not much changes in our profession. So our contractual increases, HEA and HES, those were voted on at town meeting last year successfully, which is great. It's helped me in my world with recruitment and retainment. I'm going to nod at Jonathan with the strategic plan. We've been one of the fortunate districts in which we've been pretty well staffed from top to bottom. So that's gone well for us. Utilities this year, transportation, which would be fuel and busing, but I'll talk about that in a second, as well as inflation, and then special education. Remember, we're required by law. Those are services that we have to provide. This was interesting. You hit it 3 more times, Neil, because it's going to pop up each school. Okay. This was interesting. I think Mr. Houston and I talk about how I have my nerdy Excel sheets, and then NESDEC sends you numbers, and then the state sends you numbers. But we are one of the towns in this area. So let's say Bow, Concord, Henniker, where our enrollment has gone up. And I kind of mentioned this to you last year when we were talking about kindergarten, and they kept saying our numbers were lower. I'm like, there's no way. I know parents that have reached out. I know through talking with Neil at the last meeting, several of the last, I think 7 houses have been families. A lot of people discovered New Hampshire during the pandemic from New Jersey and New York. I don't know if you noticed that trend too, but we're seeing that move in. So our enrollment, believe it or not, had gone up by 10 than what was projected. So moving on. So here are our key budget drivers. If you remember this from last year, if you weren't here last year, you're not seeing the all-in stuff. These are the highlights that we presented to our board last night and on November 15th. So these were the budgetary changes that were approved from district meeting last year with our HEA and HES. If you really remember the package we put forward for HES, we improved their benefits. I'm just trying to remind you, because what happened obviously is what happens when you improve benefits. People that weren't taking them will take them, or people that were taking a buyout may have switched, but that impacted, which was an intended consequence. We were trying to do the right thing for our people in our community, and it's paid dividends on, again, being able to staff those positions. I could point to other districts that are still not close to being staffed, especially in the instructional assistant area. As well as HES and HEA. Now on the teachers, remember, they're now paying into their benefits, which they hadn't before. So this is the first year they're paying in. I think it's about a $36,000 return this year. Then in this budget will be another 36 on top of that. So that's 72, then another. So year on and year on. So thanks, Neil. So utilities. No secret to what's going on. So this would be our oil, electric, propane, as well as, I forget what else she had, sewage, and it's not up there, but that wasn't a high number. But these are all driven specifically by inflationary costs. So it's not more usage. It's not a change in practice. That is strictly a targeted growth. That targeted growth was done with our buying group, the 3-year averages, all of the fun stuff. If you're going to ask me specifics about that, I'd have to bring Jim on. I remember because our board asked and Jim was there to answer about when our buying group expires. I don't think it expires this year. So our costs are still locked in. So that's anticipating the changes. So transportation, it's specifically around fuel. And I'm just going to be a little bit more direct. This year, what we're running into a bus shortage or bus driver shortage. In fact, we're in trouble for our winter events or winter athletic events. We're looking into parents having to drive, we're looking into coach buses. So when you're trying to target that cost, it's been challenging because we're not running a full fleet after school. We're combining teams that are going to multiple areas. But what we identified through Mr. Nato in the discussion in our November 15th meeting was trying to find savings in transportation because of cost. So what we did is we met with the bus company and we evaluated our routes. And because ridership has dropped dramatically, specifically in Hopkinton, as I said before, our pickup line has gotten dramatically larger in there. So we identified that our ridership's down and working with the bus company. Before I got here, Hopkinton ran 7 buses during the pandemic successfully. So we are going to eliminate a bus route next year, which is a savings of $76,431. The bus company feels confident that the greatest impact may be 7 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, maybe. But I feel confident that ridership is going to continue to dwindle. It's just a trend we're seeing everywhere. So we're going to see how it goes next year. But I know that that was an area that we came back last night and presented to the board that we're going to eliminate a bus route. Special education, this is, so it's interesting. Last night, that number would have said 124 up, 124,000 up. And then working with Mandy Hibbert between the 15th and last night, we were able to identify areas in which we anticipated a return. And if you remember, I keep saying if you remember, but last year at this time, I talked about Mandy's budget and how it can change overnight, special education. And that number could change prior to January. And as you saw, it changed from September to November. But right now, it looks like we're going to come in about even on that. The good savings over there would be the transportation. And that's when we have to transport a student to placement or services as needed. Okay.
And what's that significant drop? Does that relate to the nature of some of the students that are either coming in?
It'd be a student, yeah, let's say the easiest answer would be a student that no longer needs to be transported to another school. Yeah. So you're running a single bus for a single student to get to a single place. All right, so we talk about appropriate budgeting, right? We talked about that with food service. What Mr. Rizicki, I'll say, I don't like using the word discovered. I would say what he noticed when he took over his job is our annual evaluations, let's say fire system test or fire hydrants or electrical tests. All of your annual evaluations you need to run facilities were being paid for out of fund balance, essentially, right? So they weren't a line item. You couldn't find them. He didn't know where. And then we found out that it was essentially being pulled from there. So what you'll see on here, and that's why you see the annual evaluations in that the 68, that's all appropriately budgeting for again, right? Proper budgeting. So as we eliminate that fund balance, we don't want to feel like it's always going to be there. We want to appropriately budget. So you're seeing that that's where that cost essentially is that maintaining of the facilities with what needs to be required every year, as well as supply and maintenance. Okay. Technology, that number specifically, projectors were put on hold in 2019. So when all the kids got sent home, the need was obviously for personal devices or Chromebooks and the in-classroom instructions. It's time to, you guys are talking about roads, it's time to start that process of the upgraded infrastructure within the building. So that would be one of those targeted goals with projectors. Parent squares are part of our strategic plan, the communication platform we've been using for parents for notifications, snow days, early dismissal, stuff like that. So that's the cost of that. So now we're getting into the specific, either the school or the director budget. You can see, sorry, my screen just shut off. At Harold Martin, Miss Brown did a great job of diving into that budget as a new set of eyes and really digging down into what was being spent, what was not being spent, what was over budgeted for, what was not. So you can see that through some elimination, we were able to pretty much come in even. At Maple Street, the big thing there would be iExcel, and that started with the Hopkinton Public Schools Foundation. So that was purchased by them 2 years ago, and then last year it was used for ESSER funds. And this year we're looking to adopt it into our budget. So the middle high school, the one that got us the most is the increased tuition for CRTC. That's our students that go to the technical center in Concord. As well as our board had decided last year that, to give you background, I'm not sure you're aware, previously graduating classes would have to cover costs for them to graduate. Our board decided that it should be a cost of the district to graduate our students and not relied upon by the students to graduate. So we have inherited that difference in graduation. When it says math program, not to get too nerdy on you, we adopted a math program K through 8. So that would be the difference for the middle school section of the middle high school, as well as fixing the kiln. We had some issues with the kiln.
What exactly does math program mean? Is that like curriculum?
It's called illustrative maths. Yeah, so it helps support with curriculum and instruction. You're not teaching the program, it's a supportive piece. Okay. All right. So for the first time, we broke out athletics. It used to be under HMHS, but we wanted to make sure we could identify if there's changes. When it says official fees, it's inflation. And I don't mean it inflation as we're paying the officials more. The officials were able to negotiate a new contract that schools have to pay the difference on the mileage because they were essentially losing money, right? So if you lived in Concord and you're driving to ref a game over here, gas you're paying was wiping out what they were getting caught. So that 4,000 differences is actually in mileage change, not essentially fees. So SAU coming out of us, the other $75,000 would be for the food service to get to that appropriate budgeting. I put printing contract up there to refresh everyone's memory. We upgraded our infrastructure in our printing. All our copiers, all our printers are brand new this year. And we entered into an agreement, a 5-year agreement in which they maintain them. They take care of the ink, and we did that projection in which we're going to end up saving we're at a $6,500 savings so far this year on what we were previously spending. So it's starting to turn into our favor there. And then our staffing requests, this list was a lot longer when we first approached in about October. And then we identified the greater areas. I don't think it's going to be a shock to you. For what we lived through the last couple of years, we're seeing the need for, right now, we currently only have 1.5. And it goes to that level funding phrase I've been using. So we have a half-time psychologist. So we would like to move, well, we're going to anticipate moving that person to full-time. So we have 2 full-time psych through the district. But we've also changed the job descriptions so that they're doing more than they were previously. So that's what they're currently doing through ESSER funds. We'd like to adopt that. The wellness, that's at Maple Street. So that's that person who's incorporating not just physical activity, but also adding that time with the students for, we call it wellness, but it can go anywhere from health, fitness, support. And then the other 2 big ones would be the Maple Street school teacher. That's the one we've talked about year after year, how it's been always, you don't like me using the word chopping block, but that's what we talked about. That's the one that's been up and down every year. That makes it level staffing K through 8 with 4 teachers per grade. So that would be that adoption. And then the interventionist, which is the math specialist, which is what we're seeing to help these students who are returning from lack of support or closing some of the the gaps they may have occurred over the past couple of years. So as of last night, our board directed myself and Michelle to locate 380,000. We were able to reduce it last night by $389,000. And I'll get into that, the hiring after. So that's the new bottom line number of 24,852,680. And so the other area that we are anticipating a return on, Neil, do you mind pulling up that other document? No problem. So of the 389 that we were able to find, this is what happens in our profession. It's really challenging. So early retirement. So we have, they have a deadline of when they have to notify us, and then they have a deadline of when they can pull back their retirement. And right now, we anticipate a return of about $123,000 on hiring for next year. What happened last year when I first saw you, and even when I saw you in January, we had only had 3 retirements at that point when we presented the budget to you. And then after that, because of our large surplus, our board offered up another window of early retirement because we were going to have the opportunity. So 3 more people on top of that took the early retirement, plus another 2 retired, plus I had 2 administrators leave, plus I had, trying to think of what the last one was, I forget. So up there, you'll see with what I came to you early on about changing the hiring practice, right? So targeting early, that's early to the profession. Thank you. Early to the profession or new to the profession, and trying to really recruit that type of level. So that's early on those steps within a bargaining agreement. So you can see someone that is retiring at 82,000, excuse me. Oh, can you scroll? I can't do that like that. Isn't the difference on the next page? Yeah. Okay, that last columns would be the savings. So you can see hiring at a $38,000 less rate at a 22,000. So that's what you're able to target when you're trying to hire professionals. And that is what that extra 129, I'd have to look it up, 123 to 129 we're anticipating for the next school year. We want to continue that practice. It's important, and we're seeing the value on it this year at the middle high school where we had 6 new teachers, a couple new to there, and you're seeing the value that's being brought. And it's not negating anything from a veteran, right? It's only talking about what we're trying to do with what we're trying to bring to the district. So it's easy. I'll say it's easy to hire someone that's been teaching for 15 years. Very easy, right? It makes it a lot easier to transition. They've been teaching. But things that we're doing now with our mentor program and our support program, it allows you to attract that talent, it allows you to retain them, and it allows you to lower your costs. So that's going to be the continued goal of what we're doing. So I know that kind of answers that question, and we can certainly talk about it. But that last year we had a savings of 229. This year we're already, and this is just on the early numbers, about 123.
Is the curriculum director involved in getting putting together mentors?
She's in charge of the mentor program.
Or
Yep.
I don't want to call them inexperienced.
It could be new to the profession or new
I
educator.
forget what the terminology was. So that's a
Yeah, she's
directors
built it.
Sure that veterans are interacting with newer teachers to help develop them.
Yep, she's built a program, and now accountability, right? So she oversees it. So she sets up what they need to meet with them on, what they should be checking in with them. She met with them this week. So it's monthly, it's weekly, bi-weekly. It's part of her daily routine.
So theoretically, budget committee perspective, this would be a value of the curriculum director
It's one of the parts, yeah.
Not the only,
Yeah.
but helping to reduce the wages of.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the support that she provides to someone that's either new to the profession, right, or new to the district. You have mentors, but what do we pay mentors to do? We pay them to teach, right? That's their role. So for them to mentor on top of teaching, working with their students, intervening, whatever, this is part of that, the director's role to help that support. So now that teacher, the new to this district or profession, has that much more support that wasn't there before, wasn't there.
Let me just say, and it kind of maybe off topic, as a taxpayer, I'm happy to see that number. As a parent, I have mixed emotions because my experience with the kids in the school district has been that a good part of the excellence of the Hopkinton school system has been the teachers that have basically grown up in the system, have been there for a long time. Aren't some of them in this case now retiring? But you know, they know the kids, they know the kids' family, they know the brothers and the sisters. It just, I guess worries me a little bit that we lose some of that institutional memory or whatever the term that.
Yeah, and you don't, so, yeah, so there's, I'll call it the feelings piece of it. They know the families. And you don't want to lose it. You want to attract them, but you want to retain them, right? So you're not continuing to mentor, continuing to turn over. And so you would like that sustainability of our new professionals, right? But that also allows you to maintain your salary line. It's not going up and down each year either. Your seat, you can project a lot more than that continuum number.
We had a similar discussion with Steve before, I think 3 years ago now. And he said that the younger teachers tend to have more family plans and the older teachers tend to have more single
Sure.
plan. And I think one of our biggest costs this year was the increase in family plans. Is that because we have more young teachers?
No, I would actually argue the opposite of that, if you want to know because now with the new, my kids are all young, forgive me, I think you can carry your kids till you're 25, 27 now?
26.
26? So I know, not to get into the details, but I know that several of the people we hired are still under their parents. So they're actually, believe it or not, we get more of a benefit. Yeah. So good for those parents, great for us. And then you see the trend typically right now is, you know, you're either single plan or under your parents, and then you'll see a double because they'll start whatever's going on in their relationship. So believe it or not, I would argue the opposite. Yeah, because now our veterans, they carry their kids longer, right? So they're actually carrying that family plan longer than they used to.
May I ask a follow-up?
Absolutely.
12, is that how many retired last year?
So I counted Amy and Bill in there too, because they left me. So that's that, and that's part of the hiring practice. Bill's way up here and then the new person.
And is that about what we should expect, about 12
So,
year roughly?
so we don't have the anticipated fund balance this year, so I don't believe my board's gonna have the opportunity to open it up so I mean, imagine trying, this is just not to get nerdy again, but imagine saying, I want to retire at the end of the year and you have to make that decision by November. You don't know what's going to happen in your life. You don't know what's going to happen in your world. And then they have to tell us by January 15th, I believe, if they want to retract that retirement. So something may have happened in January. In fact, it happened last year in which someone retracted. So that's the challenge. The good thing about the board is because what they anticipated, they said, all right, you're at a different time of the year and 3 people took us up. So it's I would like to renegotiate some language in the next one on some timeline stuff to be more fair and also, yeah. It would be more predictable for us. It'd be easier. It would help.
Following up on Rich's first question, wonderful presentation purposes, if it would be good to add another column that would be a change in estimate.
So Neil,
Scroll up, I think it is.
I think it is.
Yeah. You scroll up.
It could be my fault. I sent it over. No, that's retirement. There's always significant retirement changes. I could do a healthcare analysis probably. from last year.
I swear to God, Steve said the younger teacher cost more on the healthcare.
Yeah, and I think that's shifted.
Well, I'm just saying the presentation, get it more. complete.
No, that was the time the town and the
Yeah.
school were talking about getting on the same plan.
Sorry, Neil, I thought, is that the PDF I sent? It's split.
That's the one you sent me, like, ordinance.
I
And it is a PDF.
it's because I switched out of Excel and I didn't change
Let me
them.
see if I.
It doesn't matter. We can do better next time.
The other thing to think about, Rich, in terms of healthcare is the risk pool. So, you know, a younger person, let's just theoretically say, is using less healthcare services, whereas an older person might be using more. So that's going to increase our rates as well. So there's a lot of moving variables in there as to, it's not just whether you're a single or two-person or family.
Thank you.
I'm glad you said it. The older part. Although my kid just broke his arm, so I'm definitely part of the risk pool, yeah. Yeah.
Just a couple
Yeah.
of questions on the graduation that we're now going to fund. Was that, for example, when we did the parking with our seniors?
Yeah, so they would, I mean, typically, so now they get to use those costs, they get to use the money that they work in parking. And they get to reduce their senior dues, their senior trip, their, all that. So the money's going to them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
They get free yearbooks, free year.
Oh, nice.
Yes, well, yeah, well, I got to look. Okay.
The class often donates something back.
Yep, yeah,
Give us signs around, et cetera, types of things.
yeah. Trying to work on them to give me a new high school sign.
Nice.
See how it goes.
And then also on the ESSER funds,
Yeah.
you had a few hirings that the ESSER funds were covering.
Yeah, so we took the route this year of rather than just adopting them in the budget, we're doing that half year phase like we did with the food service. So this year would be half year ESSER and then next year would be fully adopted. And then that would put us, I think coming out of that meeting, we felt pretty good about being where we are.
The staffing that you said.
Yeah, the level staff, excuse me.
And so that was what, the 4?
It's like the fourth grade teacher, but they can be identified anyway.
And so is there a projected, like in the 5-year plan or whatever, for once those funds, they're being used to hire them, and then what will that do to the budget? Looking ahead.
Yeah, so if you,
to that.
I'm not gonna, we can do it when we come back for real.
Right.
But if you take that ESSER, you can just take that number and adopt that half next year. So that's projected on.
Thank you.
And then another big thing, I don't know how many of you watch our school board meetings, but last night, we're moving to a full-time middle school next year. All right, so currently we have I think I explained this to you, we have middle school teachers teach 4 classes, middle school and 1 section of high school. We, through the work of Becca, the director of curriculum, and Mr. Kelly, were able to figure out a way to move it to a strictly middle school model, which they'll only teaching middle school classes and did it on a non-budgetary impact move. So that kind of transition to what you asked, Mark. It's going to really evaluate our program of studies, which we'll be doing in January. So that'll help with those costs as well, on being able to identify.
And then can I just do a shout out?
Yeah.
Just, well, Reaching Higher New Hampshire has placed a real spotlight on student voices and how important that is. And they're offering like a booklet to help students in schools help each other to to have a voice on school boards in particular.
We got a good voice. We have amazing.
I just want to say great questions, but also that you guys, our school has been doing that for years, and my son was on the school board. And thank you. I just think it's great because now they're realizing the value of that. And kudos.
Yeah, it was, it's interesting when the new rule came down that you had to have one, and I was shocked that districts didn't have one. Because my previous district, we've always had it. Now we have someone for 3 years, so we're good. Listen, if there's nothing, if you don't remember it now, just email Rob and I. Finance meets next Thursday. You changed it. Tuesday. You can shoot us an email, and then when we come back, I believe we're on January 11th. I think we're booked for the 11th. We'll have some solid stuff for you.
I had one more.
Yeah, let's go.
The early retirement
Yeah.
spreadsheet that had, I think, 12 lines on it.
Not all
Last
early
year.
retirement.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
yep.
So does this list only include full-time classroom teachers? Because we're paying into their retirement
That was full-time classroom teachers and administrators.
and administrators?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So of the total number of full-time classroom teachers and administrators, how much what percent does 12 represent? Like, how many people retired percentage wise of the total?
Yeah, no, I guess that's a safe one. It might be a little lower than that. Yeah,
Somewhere
9 to 10%.
9 to
Yeah,
10,
10%.
8 to 10.
Okay, so circling back around to the other question about, is this what you might see typically?
No,
This is probably bigger than.
that was bigger,
typical.
but
And because of your offering,
because of the second offering, yes.
yes. So
Right now, I can, like I said, I can tell you
I
that.
wouldn't want 10% a year to
No,
go.
no, no. I can tell you that we have 3 that have committed so far this year. Last year at this time, we had 4 and then 2 rescind and then 4 more pick up, so. The timings of the contract does not play in our favor for budgeting at all. That's something we need to work on. I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have a sort of a more 10,000-foot view question for you real quickly. I had read about our education commissioner talking about trying to increase the school voucher program. I'm just curious if you could briefly comment. So is that a zero-sum game? Like if more people start to use that and tax dollars go to private schools, does that decrease the dollars that come to the town? Like, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but
Yeah, not to get too in the weeds, the short answer would be yes,
Okay,
but it's also depending on the number per town of the significance of the value, right? I think we have, I'm gonna say 3 to 7
3 to 7 total.
right now.
are
Yeah.
Out of our.
They're accessing those opportunities, education freedom account, whatever it might be. So it
and so that would decrease the state.
goes into the,
Coming
it
to,
goes into the formula. Okay, same as the formula that the other one I'll echo is the free and reduced lunch. We were one of the districts that maintained the same level than pre-COVID. There was something, I'm gonna use a number about 6,000 lost. And we, again, not to get into the weeds, but not tying it towards what was the automatic system that could automatically generate it. And so we're still on the, you got to fill it out, you got to fill it out, you got to fill it out. Even if you don't think you qualify, you might qualify. That is actually probably the bigger financial impact on people that might qualify that don't sign up. That's where you get the greater use of funds.
and then I guess my only follow-up to that is whether you have any sense, so if a student uses a voucher to go to a private school, do you have a sense as to whether the reduction in state money to the school outweighs the savings of not having that student in the
I'd say that
system?
we haven't,
Do you know?
yeah, we haven't seen that impact because our numbers aren't significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, hang on one second, Deb. I had a thought there. The lawsuit that we're involved in, you guys remember that? And it's going to trial in April. And the unique part about the unique part about what the lawsuit is it's not arguing taxing. It's not arguing about how you raise the funds. It's arguing the bottom line number of what an adequate education number should be. It's a significant difference than what's been argued previously since Claremont, you can go back. So they're trying to put the stake in the ground, because right now the state thinks it's about $3,300 roughly. You always laugh. It's a joke. I know. So it's 3,300. So they're arguing the new number, right? That's really what the basis of the case is on. So I actually believe that it'll bring a significant, now it's obviously no matter who wins or loses, it's going to be appealed, but I think it's at least talking about not how we're gonna raise it, which is a whole different argument in New Hampshire, which we talked about, but at least talking about what a real number is to educate a kid.
Can you share with us what that?
I can't, unfortunately. I can't. I wish I could.
More.
I just, I don't want a lawsuit coming against me right now.
You think it's realistic? What's?
I think it's fair. I don't think it's unreasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable. I think what we're trying to argue is reasonableness, and 3,300 is not reasonable. It's not in 2023. Deb, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think we should, we're all affected by this, but that voucher, they are looking to increase it. Right now, it's about 83,000 per family, and they're looking to increase it to 139. So we're looking at our numbers possibly in other school districts growing in there, and we will have more impact, obviously, if that happens. So I think that's something we should all, be aware of.
Yeah. We also want to, retain and attract. I mean, we have several people that tuition in. That's a big deal for us.
So let me, so our enrollment number, that's butts in our seats, right? Because I've seen that argued otherwise.
So ADM, the number you saw, the ADM number, that is our butts in the seats are 960.
Okay.
Our ADM, average daily membership, it means if kids are out sick, is about 950. And that's what the formula was.
So of that enrollment, X number of kids are being tuitioned in, not a huge number, but some kids.
Correct. 5
to 7 kids we just identified are from our town are being vouchered out. And then X number of kids are still being homeschooled.
So it's interesting, no one keeps the data on homeschool. They only have to notify us that they're going to homeschool. It's not an annual notification. So you only know when they re-enroll. It's actually one of the things we've continued to bring up state of who's tracking it. And it's not even based on, but we got to make sure these kids are okay and checking in. And so don't have that specifically. We have our data of when they notified. They could have moved to Massachusetts. They never had to notify us that they were moving.
That's shocking. I thought there was a whole procedure where they had to register.
Well, they have to register, right? But they register as a homeschool student. That district can make the determination of contacting us, and what we have on file is the last time they were in school was 4 years ago.
Right.
And it's not just tracking the numbers of people that are doing it, but also what is being
Taught.
Yeah. Very little oversight.
But aren't the homeschool students, parents eligible for the vouchers also?
Yeah, there's an avenue for them with the education freedom account. I think that's what that is. Yeah.
I just have another 10,000-foot question to ask. Should Hopkinton is enrollment going up in Hopkinton a good thing for us? We know that we have a very small industrial and business base, and we have a lot of housing. There's even more houses being built. And, in the past, going way back, our school board even looked at recruiting students to come in from other towns and paying them.
I think Webster, I heard Webster today.
Just to get our numbers up.
Yeah.
But clearly, the more students that we bring in, the more people we have to hire to educate them. So Hopkinton's enrollment is going up and other towns around us are going down. Does that mean that our taxes are going to go up relative to towns around us?
Yeah, so I would say that after being here now a year and a half, we are properly staffed. We're not overstaffed. And when you talk about growing in the bubbles, I'll call them bubbles. So 70 in one graduating class, 50 in the next. You talk about bubbles, and that's class size, essentially is what we're talking about. I'd say the way I do think going up is good for us. I do, because there's more value that comes in. And then I would say that what we've been presenting and putting us at level staffing will handle both of those flows, right? So if you have I don't think you'll ever see the 50 again. I think you're going to see us between 60 and 75 of a graduating class. I think that's the trend. So I think we're properly staffed for that.
Okay, I guess I appreciate what you said, but what I'm talking about is balancing the needs of the taxpayer
Yeah.
versus the school. Yes, the school is growing and it's getting better and we're hiring more people, but is that?
I don't think we're going to hire more people though. I think we're at that.
I'm sorry, with
Yeah.
enrollment going up.
Yeah, I don't think I wouldn't, if I say this politically correct. While I don't forecast any of me saying we need more teachers. I don't see that. I think we are there. I think we are.
So as a follow-up to that, you must have a sense of with the current capacity, physical plant and staff, we can handle X number of students.
That's a different question. Staff and facility are different questions.
But at some point, we have to have a sense of, we can handle 1,000 students or we can't handle it.
Correct. Actually, yeah. So it's a 2-point question. I don't think we'll grow to the point where we need to hire a 5th teacher per grade level. I don't anticipate that type of growth. Facility wise, when I say that's a different question, is I would say we are in good shape at Harold Martin. We're in good shape at the middle high school. Maple Street, we became creative. We took away, I don't know how many you've been there, the conference room used to be a conference room there. That's now a classroom. So we've gotten creative with our spaces. That building is tight. That would be where I would have to come back, and maybe if those classes continue to be, if 70 becomes the norm, it might have to be a look at a classroom or two. And then the middle high school, we're already looking at different ways to create spaces. So 2-part question, kind of the same answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very artfully.
I guess what I'm trying to get at some point, if we aggressively recruited, especially in the high school, 10 kids from another town that doesn't have a quite as high a ranked a school system, that's $180,000 a year on our bottom line or whatever. And, people are asking these kinds of questions. So I think we need to know, is that something that's feasible or?
Yeah, so it's funny because when people want to tuition in, it's going to sound silly, but there's an application process, right? And we want to make sure that it's not just a number coming through the door. You want to make sure you're getting the quality of what we're providing and they'd be a fit. And also there is a number discussion, right? There was, I think last year we had 5 apply for, I want to say 7th or 8th grade. So we were looking at that number to make sure disrupting the apple cart on what we are providing our students. So, yeah.
And in your packet, you guys can see year after year how the board has increased the tuition rate. So you can see that we evaluate.
The last one, I think it's at
Yeah,
19,000
it's in the packet that I sent you guys. So the board every year discusses what's an adequate amount for someone to tuition in. And you can see it increases year after year.
I could give you the number if you want.
If you want to pop it on the screen, if you don't mind, Neil, please, I'm sorry.
Did you provide it?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was going to pull up the same thing.
there we go.
What would prompt you to decline someone's application to tuition in?
Sometimes they're coming here for the wrong reason. Yes. Sometimes they had previous behavior issues. And when I say the wrong reason, when you go through the interview process, sometimes people think they're going to find the solution here for problems that it's not here, right? Sometimes you run away from things. So there's a couple things.
Would you also deny someone if there are, say there was 3 or 4 that wanted to come in there, all the same age and that classroom was
Correct.
filled?
Absolutely. Yeah, lower elementary. Since I've been here, most of our tuitions have been in the middle high school. Appreciate it. So our rate coming into next year. I don't know where to find it. I can't, there's a poll in my face. Sorry.
I don't think next year's on there.
It's not up there yet, because it went up. So last year was 17,749 for secondary, and then lower elementary was 17,964. This year it went up again.
Why would it go down?
When did it go down?
It's from 2021 to 21-22.
That may have been, I'm gonna throw out there, that felt like 21-20 would have been when March 20 is when it would have had the pandemic began, yeah. So I don't want to say I wasn't here that year, but I wasn't here that year.
I mean, it seems to have gone down from 16, from 15, 16 to 16, 17. In the kindergarten and elementary levels as well. I guess what goes into the calculus.
I'd have to ask Michelle, yeah,
All right.
okay.
Anything else?
Just curiosity, if a student that had special needs applied for tuition, could we legally say no because it's going to cost us more?
You would never say those words out loud. You would evaluate the proposition of it too. And
So he says no.
yeah, yeah, there's layers to that. There's layers.
I didn't know if there was some restrictions.
No, it's the same application process, and if they disclose that they have an IEP or not, you know, that would be part of the application process, so.
Does the other school though have to support whatever the costs are?
So it depends on how they exited that district. If they're leaving on their own will, they're challenging manifest educational hardship. So there's just a couple layers to that.
So it's not
It's not a simple
necessarily,
answer, yeah.
it's not necessarily the fact that they would have, the other district would have to pay all Hopkins.
They may, it may be why, it depends on, most times if that's happening, the school's calling us to say, hey, this is what we need, and that's worked out probably at full tuition. But if they're just walking off the street and then they're saying we have this, they're transitioning on their own, so that's different. Great questions.
You haven't said much. Did you want to discuss anything?
Wingman, here's my support animal.
So I'm gonna just add a little bit. So our next step now is we don't meet until January. So this is gonna go to the finance committee. Finance committee is gonna look at what we have for funds. You know, we have Article 10, which we're gonna use. It's maxed out, as you guys all know. That helps reduce the tax rate impact. As one board member, you know, I asked the finance committee to back out everything that we had voted on in the past. And when we look at the tax rate, so we talk about the bond, that has a tax rate, that has an impact on the budget. Everyone here unanimously supported teacher's contract last year and HES. Those are two tax rate impacts that are part of this budget that I want to back out. And then Rob's going to look at the inflation as an impact in the budget. All these things that have been accumulated in it, and I wanted to kind of look at the increases minus that as an overall picture, you know, as one board member that I wanted to see when before I vote on the budget. So I appreciate them coming tonight to, you know, take a little deep dive into this and its progress. Sorry to take away from the town tonight, but it's important that we do this in stages so you guys can get a feel for where we are in our budgeting process. So when we come back, you guys can say, I remember when they did this and they did that. So kind of works out good.
And just one more thing before Rob and I leave. You know, not just an email, you can call me. You can get my cell phone from Long, and we can meet. I think we've had Rob and I and Andrea, and we've had several successful community meetings where people have reached out and said, hey, you know, this is what we're looking at, and I've sat down with them. So come in, sit down, discuss, and I can point. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing that I won't share, and there's definitely, I can help you explain the why, right? You want to know why your dollars are going to that or what they're providing. I'd love to, so feel free.
I would also just comment, nice program.
Yeah, I saw you yesterday.
Mr. Const at Harold Mark.
It was,
Very well attended.
man, it was, yeah,
Standing room only.
yeah. So we have a capacity of 446 in that room. And we were near 446. Yeah. I made sure I stood by the sign because.
Nice part of the show.
Yes, no, it was, yeah, so kindergarten, first grader yesterday, they had never had a concert there, right? Neither of our second graders, by the way, so they learn, I was over there, I'm losing track of days, Monday, and they have never had to stand on risers before. So we were just trying to teach them, it's actually not an apparatus to jump off. It's not, so it was fun. They did a great job. They did a very good job. And we live streamed it, which was new for us. We had nearly, actually today I had to live stream from my meeting. We had nearly 100 on today on top of who was there. So, great. All right. So if I don't hear from you, I'll see you in January. Happy New Year.
Very good.
Have a good break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
It's not that good. Okay, thank you, Norm. Anything else?
No, that's it. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, super helpful. Okay, where are you, Don?
I have nothing new.
Great. Bam. I get it. And Victoria.
We're presenting next Wednesday, right? So I'll save all the very minor stuff until next Wednesday.
You don't want to ruin the surprise.
Yeah,
Okay.
about the electricity cost.
I won't be surprised to anybody. Okay. Great. So let me reopen the public comment period. Please state your name and your address.
Good evening. I'm Tricia Lambert. I'm at 305 Galloping Hill Road. Came tonight to listen for the budget, but I'm actually going to speak a little bit about a couple things I heard tonight. So we homeschool our children. So I heard the superintendent speak about tracking children. And I'm really appalled at that. This is a free country. Okay. And tracking children, we follow the law. It's a state law. We follow it. And we have our children are good, well-adjusted, smart kids. And I even have a child had an IEP. So I just ask that you understand that there's different ways to teach children, and it isn't all about doing it in one way. I really wasn't going to say anything tonight, but what I heard is disturbing. To say that you're tracking children, that you don't like the way, that you may not like the way that others choose to teach their children. So I didn't want to make an issue. I really wanted to listen to, I've never been to a budget meeting before, and I really came with the intent to listen. So that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just, thank you for the comment. Just to clarify, because I thought I heard the same thing you did. I believe what was said was that in New Hampshire, you actually can't track homeschooled children.
Said you couldn't track children and that it was,
Right.
I heard it was a problem. That's what I heard.
Okay, just to clarify, I thought the problem was related to the fact that we as a district then just don't
They're
know
not getting
from a woman.
certain education that may not be acceptable to the group. You can go back and play it, but that's what I heard. I appreciate trying to clarify,
Yeah,
but the word tracking came into play. That's illegal. We follow the law. We follow the law that is provided for homeschooling. And that's the bottom line. And it's just, I'll be honest, I would love to have my children back in school, but they were rejected in writing because they couldn't wear a mask. Okay, that's where we're at. I had a child with an IEP, he couldn't wear a mask. He did not have a mask for 2021. And the new system came in with the new safety plan. They told us, I'm sorry, and it was in writing. Wear a mask, you can attend class only if you wear a mask. And I already had a waiver approval with the prior administration. So that's why my children were out of school. It's fine. Homeschooling is great. I learned something new. So I didn't intend to have this conversation, but I would ask to be a little open to the way other children learn besides it being in an institutional way. That's all I have. If you have any questions, sorry, I know you weren't expecting that today, but it's my truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren Clement, 86 Maple Street. I just had a comment on the two graphs that went up about savings on early retirement opposed to new hires. And unfortunately, superintendent's taking his laptop, but in that it showed a substantial savings. But my understanding is when teachers take early retirement, that there's some sort of carrot, some sort of incentive. And I'm guessing that's a monetary amount. And I don't know if that can be discussed or not because might be private negotiations, but I'm not sure that that was shown in that slide. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but if you're having a teacher retire 3 years earlier, do they pay something every 3 years? Or is it one lump sum? Is that a 10%, a 15%, a 50% of their salary? No idea. So to me, those slides are missing a component, or maybe they are not. But to me, it went unanswered, and it's worth noting that. And I don't know where that comes out of. It comes out of some. I don't know if they then include that in the salary, or their salary continues into the next calendar year. But
I want to see if Norm can speak to your question.
sure.
So in our every budget, we're required, based on their contract, to budget for 3 early retirements. I believe the amount is between 30 and 40,000. When someone pulls back their retirement, that money that's allotted into the budget goes right back into the reserve fund balance. Last year, the school board decided to open that because we had money in the unreserved fund balance. And so we were able to do that, get them to accept early retirement voluntarily. And then right there on the sheet was an example of the savings that we were able to have with our hiring practices. But it is a budgeted item that this budget committee sees year after year of 3 early retirement options.
And it can be used or not used, but it's unclear how much of that is used, correct?
So every meeting, when someone accepts early retirement, the board votes on that in a motion to accept that. And so if it's 3 retirements that are accepted, the money that's been part of the budgeting process that we put aside required is allocated to those individuals. In the past, we reopened those positions. We reopened early retirement because we've had the opportunity to take funds to entice them to take it.
Norm,
How does that correlate into that, though?
No, so the budgeting process, in our budgeting process, year after year, we set aside 3 early retirement options that are budgeted and allocated to those people to take early retirement.
And the total budget for that is about 30 to 40,000.
I think it's about 30,000.
So it's about 10,000 per early retirement.
No, it's 30,000 per person.
Oh, 30,000 per person.
Yep,
That's
$30,000.
$90,000 budget.
So
Is that $30,000 just an incentive to have them take early retirement? Just like a bonus. If you don't retire early, is
that's been negotiated with their contract. We've been dealing with this for.
And your point is that.
So times 10 people, that's $300,000.
Net out.
That's not correct. It was not 10 people that was.
I thought he said there was 12 retirements, 2 left on their own, 10 were early retirements. That would be $300,000 that just came out of the general fund.
I think
The savings were 279. There's a wash.
Some of them were just retirements, some of them were administration.
correct.
The other point is that it would be a single. It's a
And-
single payment, the
Yeah,
30,000 per person.
It doesn't go on for 2 years, 3 years.
So
Right, so the annual savings that you would get in the delta would continue on in
Not all of them got.
every year.
So
That wasn't displayed in that slide, though. Am I correct?
I'm not sure I think you need to meet with Mike again to, you know, this question, because I don't want to give you the wrong answer. And that's probably your best path.
I met with him and he steered away from it, but I was speaking to the presentation, and the presentation, in my opinion, as I'm sitting here, it didn't include that, and if it did,
So as a budget,
where is it?
as a budget committee, you know, they know that we set aside money in our budget for early retirement year after year, and that's allocated in our budget. The hiring practices of what the superintendent displayed tonight showed how he took the savings from retirement. Some that took early retirement, the bottom line was 229. I don't know the exact total of everything on the top because I don't have that data, but I do encourage you to talk to Mike Flynn, send him an email.
Okay, that doesn't answer the question, but thank you.
Could tell us what was the total expenditure on early retirement last year. And
Yeah, I mean,
so that's if I'm sure that Michelle or Mike has that information, and that would help to address your question.
Yeah, I just thought it would, I don't necessarily need the number. I just thought it was omitted from the presentation, and
We were all assuming that was a net number. So that's what we would need clarification.
So what I'm hearing is there's a question as to whether it's, I certainly don't know if it's, but maybe we could, Norm, you could find out for the next meeting. When we talk about the savings of a teacher taking early retirement, in that column, does that include the $30,000 that's paid off, or does that show up somewhere else? Teacher savings.
We'll find
Just so we understand that column of the savings.
Yeah, we'll find a way to address it appropriately and how we can do it. But, you know, for budgetary reasons, I want to explain that every budget we put money aside for that. And last year, the board reopened it because we knew that we had the opportunity to fund that from our unreserved fund balance, which Michelle calculated. But I understand you want to see the whole calculation.
I don't want to see the whole calculation. I just want to know when we talk about the savings of a teacher taking early retirement, if that number's in there or not. Or if it shows up somewhere else. That's all I'm asking. I as a budget committee member, just to understand. So we saw a column of the savings.
Yep.
For different people that retire. Some of them are teachers taking early retirement. If included in that savings, if that nets out after the 30,000 comes out, or if the 30,000 goes somewhere else. That's all. Just where it is.
Thank you.
okay. I just wanted to bring that up as a factor because to me it seemed omitted.
Thanks. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I'm asking the question, not because I think it's, I just want to understand the number.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine.
Well, just to add to that, I had asked about the health insurance.
Right.
And I think
Which I think you said you could do a separate column.
Yeah.
I think you'd said.
and what Krista was mentioning about maybe we shouldn't be looking at a 1-year window, maybe we should
Right.
be a couple of years.
Right. Because that savings is going to be.
Some of it's forward.
There's a one lump
savings.
sum payment, but the savings.
The savings amortized over the individual
Step
salary.
one versus step whatever.
So if you pay someone out 30,000 or whatever the number is, I don't know the exact number, you know, you have that saving year after year with their contract as opposed to be at 88.
To somebody who's capped out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get that savings in future budgeting process.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of it. If someone taking the early retirement, you're able to hire someone. Not I want to say younger. You hire someone with experience that maybe 4 or 5 years.
Earlier in their career.
Earlier in the career.
Yeah,
Thank you.
progression.
And that's part of the hiring process. You know, our budget is mostly salaries and, you know, with Mike coming on as superintendent, it was a discussion with the board. And, you know, this was something that I asked for him to share with you guys because we want to show that there's progress in what we're trying to do in order to find savings on our budgeting process and to show the community that we're not hiring anyone at the top level from other districts. You know, our goal has been to retain our teachers, you know, and you've mentioned that you didn't like seeing so many leave. And, that wasn't our choice that they left, some of them went on to greener pastures and opportunities for them. No, I'll try to unpack that and see what I can deliver to you on that.
Well, I think it's a helpful thing to understand.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, essentially, you're making an investment for a multi-year savings, right? And so it'd be helpful to know, is your investment, the 30,000 in early retirement, is it paid off in a year? 2 years? And it depends, of course, on who it is and what their salary is, on what the inheritance is, but I think that Michelle could probably run that pretty.
I'm sure she did.
Overall, we tend to, be in the net positive,
Yeah.
year two or whatever it might be.
But I want to make it clear, I don't think Mike did any thing
Yeah, I don't
trying.
I don't think so.
I think, yeah.
He's trying to make it.
He was trying to make me, he really dug deep for that, but I think it's great to see an
I'm
amortization.
not suggesting,
Yeah, all right, I just make sure we're all.
let's just understand the savings.
And I have one other comment on the fund balance. Made the reference, it was 371 at this time last year, and it's down to 73 now.
Yep.
What's your goal at the end of the year to have that fund balance be?
That's a whopper of a question. I don't think that's really, I've heard in meetings before that a good fund balance could be like 300,000. And then I really mean that is good for the district. And the reason for that is because we're taking money out of Article 10. And then we have nothing to replenish it in there. That's a big concern for the town later down the road. You're gonna have a reserve. A lot happens between March and June. People pull back their early retirement, could be 40,000, could be 80,000 going back in there. There really is not necessarily a target number. The point of what we've been trying to accomplish has been to reduce it and to show the community that what we're asking for, we're spending, and there's no surplus unless it's contractual stuff that happens or grants come in that we're not aware of or extra funding that goes in there.
Now, I asked the question because in my mind,
Yeah.
that's your slush fund, and any corporation needs a slush fund because you don't know what's going to happen. You need, in my opinion, $200,000 to $400,000 at the end of the year in that fund.
Yeah, and I think Debbie, you heard it in the meetings from the board. I am very nervous about using Article 10 because I don't know if we can ever get to the point where we are right now where it's maxed out. Because we have improved our budgeting process to eliminate a substantial surplus. So there's going to be harder choices down the road for us to do.
Catch me up the next year because you don't have that offset.
Correct. So where people, I totally agree, a huge fund balance is not good. But when you are doing bottom line budgeting like we're trying to do, and he's year 2 in his position, and to get where we are right now is remarkable.
Right.
It shows that he's budgeting accordingly. We approved a budget on the budget committee, and he's allocating the resources and not having a huge surplus.
So I think there's like this connective thread I've felt over the course of these meetings where, and this kind of brings it together for me. So we just need to be able to articulate to the community, starting with, let's say, hiring practices and the double offering for early retirements, one-time cost, right? For long-term savings of teachers earlier in their career. Then we say savings, but upgraded facilities director and new curriculum director. So again, we are talking about long-term cost, but intrinsic value, right? And we know that it exists, and we know that there's some quantifiable stuff like the grants that Jim is applying for, but it's more about keeping our teachers and having a stable course moving forward. Like he said, we're not trying to make big changes moving forward. We're trying to get to a point of homeostasis with the staffing levels. So I think all of these, if presented correctly, will help the town understand the curriculum director and the enhanced facilities director, that this is a very well thought out plan for how to get to a comfortable place where we feel safe as a district, that we're not gonna have anything come out of the, or like, that we're gonna reduce the risks of things coming out of the woodwork, like deferred maintenance. Or, you know, dissatisfied staff that end up, you know, turning the schools into like, you know, with upheaval, right? We're trying to become a more steady, predictable school district.
Yeah, and each position adds value to the district tremendously. You know, with our facilities director, it's been great using his expertise going forward with our energy committee. He did it with Oyster River. You know, we're getting our feet going with that, you know, with these audits, and it's gonna add savings down the road once you put all the data in there. And, you know, if you guys watch our meetings, Becca's always reporting out stuff that she's doing changes. You know, one thing I heard real quickly, you know, was at Rotary last week, she spoke, there's 2 Rotary members here. And three? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I apologize. Sorry. I don't, did you ever heard her talk? But
It's $1.
it's $1. She came and she spoke, and I had people come up to me after saying, I wish I'd heard this speech 6 years ago, I would have approved that position. And I think it was.
I think I said.
I think he did. And to me, it really was like, wow, that was really great to hear, because our position had a lot of value. And, you know, I think for us to have her be part of this community was just great. I was glad she came.
Yes.
It was great to hear. So I will unpack that. I'll charge Michelle with that so you guys can see it, and we'll bring it back in. I'm gonna bring it back in January, not next week. I think it's a little tricky. Or do you want for next week? January is okay. All right. Perfect.
Anything else for Norm?
Oh, we're still on.
Okay, other business. I've got 2 items here. First, I got a very friendly note from Kara. Who's
Kara?
Kara Johnson.
Yes, Kara Johnson, telling me that our written report of the Hopkinton Budget Committee is due to the town, the shockingly early date of January 6th. Maybe it's not shockingly early, but since we've
Always been that.
always been that, but we've never delivered it in my time remotely close to that. So I wanted to invite a member of this committee to raise your hand to prepare the written report, which goes into the town report. The beauty of it is that you have an excellent template from last year created by Mr. Houston.
I can do it if you want me to.
You are officially appointed.
I nominate Rich Houston, right?
Great. So January 6th is the due date.
We'll do it evenly.
It's interesting to do it because we will not even have.
You can actually have some more time.
Yes. It's nice to have heard, it's nice to at least have heard the school's real budget proposal, so perhaps you submit it shortly after that. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything special you want me to put into it this year?
Norm talks a lot.
Says me.
Goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Steve just mentioned that a recognition of Janet. would be
Oh, yeah,
appreciated.
great.
Thank you, Rich, for doing that. And then I guess I wanted to, we do have a meeting on the schedule next week. And I wanted to see if I know we were planning to have budget presentations by both precincts, which we can do. But I guess I wanted to see if we feel that if another option would be to do them in January, just do them at the same day, January 11th, I think it is, when we have the school district. And I'm not sure we have other pressing business next week. So before dragging you all back here, I guess I wanted to at least put that out there to see.
I guess,
folks have thoughts.
what's the consensus of the committee of how much discussion we have on the table about the town?
Yeah, so that's right. So that's the part, that's the other piece is if we wanted to have further conversation about the town budget. I didn't hear questions for Ken to go back to the select board with, to come back to us, but if there's, further discussions we have there. So yeah, open for discussion. Do you have some thoughts on that, Steve?
I think given what's gonna happen with the school budget, what's already happening with the school budget, that it might be nice to clear our plates with the 2 precincts on the town budget next week and then resume fresh in January. Obviously, we are in for a rough couple of years, so. And there's already a lot of discussion in the community. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we're asking between the town and I'm sure the precincts, the county and the school for a significant increase in tax money this year. And it's going to be just as much, if not more next year, realistically. So I guess I, for one, would like to see us clear our plates next week and then start fresh with the school budget in January, which I anticipate will take several meetings probably.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Other thoughts?
I mean, if there are, more discussion warranted on the town, then certainly I agree, let's meet next week. But, I wasn't hearing anything and select board's not going to be meeting for another 12 days. So there's nothing I can report back to the select board.
Love some further input on, from other committee members on Steve's thought about the value of coming back together next week to talk further about the town budget and get through the other ones versus waiting till January.
Neil, could I just, how many hundreds of thousands make $1 on the tax rate? Is it 630?
It's probably, it should be.
How many hundreds of thousands? Because
It should be about 794.
Yeah, just evaluation. It does change, it doesn't.
there's 790.
Or 794 million.
So you gotta add that up. How many dollars per thousand we're talking on these two budgets?
Ours is right
46 cents on the town.
here, 46.
School is 1.7.
It was like closer to it was like 1.79, basically.
But there's a difference because their number is being used with fund balance. Ours has not been applied to a fund balance whatsoever.
Oh, so you haven't put any fund balance
No,
against it?
nothing. That is pure raw
Oh, so we
data.
don't know this.
No, that's pure raw data.
All right.
So I just want to make sure they're on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So,
Too early.
yeah, yes, correct. So when we come in January, we'll have a firm number after there's final discussion at the board table. We just wanted to show you what it is before we use our magic.
I think that last year we did some kind of pre-holiday, like sanity check across the board, if there was any strong, it was specific to the school, I remember, but strong opposition to approving the school budget, to know what we're in for January. I mean, can we do some kind of like consensus check on the town to determine whether it warrants coming back next week? I mean, there's one thing to say, like,
Right now, like a little.
Just see where
we're at, yeah.
Take the pulse.
Take the pulse of the room.
I mean, I know that nobody likes increases. You don't have to vote for if you like it or not.
Right.
It feels
But-
very fixed.
Right,
It doesn't feel like there's a lot of wiggle.
right.
I mean, I guess we could quibble about the road bond, but much beyond that, but, right. mean,
I don't like
and
my
eventually-
oil bill going up. But I still have to pay.
But I mean, just follow, what I sense from that question is sort of what I'm thinking of too, which is like, I mean, don't like it, but can't make the utilities cost less.
Yeah, I've watched their budgeting process from start to finish. And they've made a lot of tough decisions throughout their whole process, and I was quite pleased with the changes they had to make, and at this point, I do support it. I think it's a lot of, the select board and made a lot of changes to that budget through the whole process, and the driving factor is inflation. I will say I'm happy to see that they are rewarding with a merit increase to the employees here. To me, it's about retaining them and rewarding them for all their hard work and continue to give them what's going on in our economy with inflation, and they deserve it. So.
Well, the fact is that what was it, Ken, 6%, 6.2? Yeah, I mean, that's not even keeping pace with inflation right now. So, I mean, that's gonna net out. I think I agree with you. I wish it was more, but I also think it's a responsible way to try to bridge the gap a little bit.
Yeah, and as I had mentioned, that's probably 40% of the total increase we're looking at.
I should have asked this question during the discussion, but when is what was the last tax year that a merit increase was?
Last year.
So we only give merit increases. We do not have like steps, and so what is in that merit pool is the entire amount.
Okay.
So we have ranges for each position, but it's not.
It's not on top of our contract.
There's no cost of living. There's no cost of living. It's really just that, just so it's clear, because sometimes you hear, oh, it's a 5% increase, but that's a 5% increase plus a step increase.
Okay.
Because some
We don't have steps.
may not get any of their full performance.
Right.
Yeah. And we don't have unions.
My sense is from what other towns are doing, they're in the same place. A couple of towns are really low. They didn't feel they could afford any, and their employees were being contacted immediately by other towns. We're
Because the labor shortage is all across the board.
except for a budget committee minute taker where it falls.
Apparently, we need to bump up the salary for that.
With the road on, there will be a public hearing for that, so people will come. Does that know how it works?
Yes, there has to be a public hearing.
And then, so that'll be a time for
And there'll be a budget. There'll also be a budget.
be a public hearing. So the select board hasn't voted on that yet, from my understanding. So until they.
Just to the extent of, we're announcing it tonight.
Correct. So you will be going back to your board saying, hey, this is the feedback from here. And then since there's really no pushback on the bond, you'll issue the warrant and then notify the public hearing and get comments.
The board has voted
They have voted.
to support everything
Okay.
that was presented tonight.
All right. So,
And even that is only 2 million against the 4.5 that you need to get the Briar Hill done.
It's only a portion.
Is there further feedback on the town's budget? Well, so we've got two things on the table right now. Feedback on the town's budget and warrant articles. To take the pulse of the room, to see if we need to partly to see if we need to come back next week, which we can do. Waiting, kind of hear people out. And also, if the districts are really excited to come next week, I don't want to shortchange you on that.
It makes no difference to me.
Okay.
I don't have an opinion either way. Happy to come next week, happy to wait until January.
I'd rather wait till January.
I mean, I'm with Rich, and I'm mindful of your point about it. I'm just not sure how long discussion is really gonna be on the town budget in my mind. Maybe I'll be surprised at that, but maybe we do need, but
they save it off for me. Everything.
it doesn't feel to me like there's a lot of wiggle room in my mind. I mean, not to give up the discretion to look at it, but just in listening to it, it sounds reasoned to me, and it sounds like a lot of it just has to do with the increase of cost of doing business in my mind. So.
Any further thoughts? think what I'm gonna do is just ask for, we'll just do a little vote. So I'm gonna ask for a motion to eliminate our meeting next week. And we can come back in January and we can see, take the temperature in that way. So would someone like to make that motion? I know we don't formally need this, but I'm just gonna ask for it.
Sure, I'll make the motion.
And I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? You really want to make this?
I guess I would just say that next week is our published scheduled meeting, right? Like for people who just look it up on the website and say, when does the budget committee meet? Oh, it's, it would be, they would show up next week, expecting to see us, right?
So we will, on the calendar, we'll leave it and put cancel.
Okay, we have a way to.
Back.
People will be notified that we won't be meeting, all those people. All of those people. If only. Okay, any more comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
So sneaky.
I also stay.
Well, actually,
I
I
was
was to
bored.
attend the beer promo at my own restaurant.
Delayed.
I'm not like, I'm up.
That was the most delayed ayes I've ever heard on a board or in committee.
Yeah.
It was like, aye.
Okay, then we will reconvene
Next year.
next year.
Happy New Year, all.
And hit a card. So a motion to adjourn,
So move.
What's the date?
January 11th.
January
Wednesday.
11th.
It's not the first Wednesday. Second Wednesday, January the 11th.
Okay, thank you.
All right, all in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Aye.
All right.
Great.
You were off the hook if you want to go.
No, I'll go real quick.
What's the beer?
You look really tired.
Dark beer, go real quick for one. That'd be great.
Oh, cool.
We'll do it. Unless you don't want to.
Oh, I was gonna go to the restaurant anyway.
I'll go with you. Yeah, no.
One of them is the collaboration. And then, the other one. Where is it? Yeah. Oh, really?